down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a five in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello and good morning to you. And I'm sure that some people out there are not having such a good morning because yesterday seemed to be the day of spats and quarrels, and that's putting it mildly, isn't it? I mean, it started off with Reform UK Chairman Zia Youssef resigning, and I'm still trying to piece together what's gone on here and doing my little thing of speaking to various individuals and weighing it all up, and it just seems like a rather unfortunate circumstance. But we are going to be talking about that and delving more into what's happened, whether it's going to impact the party and where they go from here throughout the show. And then I get home after a pretty lively drive time show of the fallout in Reform UK, minding my own business, doing a jigsaw because I'm 41 and absolutely cool, killing it in life, doing a jigsaw, the wine regions of France, and all of a sudden my phone's lighting up because something unholy is taking place in America. That's right. And I'm a big fan, along with Jigsaw's cryptic crosswords, because, like I said, I'm very cool, of Greek mythology. And I kind of like rereading modern interpretations of the old Greek legends. And the blow-up between Elon Musk and Donald Trump was like something, written from the days of yore. It was like the sort of egos of the Greek gods, the wrath and the vengeance. I mean, it really was remarkable. If, when it came to the Greek-Trojan War, it was all over Helen and a face could launch 1,000 ships, and it seems between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, the big, beautiful Bill launched 1,000 tweets. I was reading through some of the synopses of all the spats going on. Donald on Truth Social saying this, Elon saying that, accusing Donald Trump of being related to Epstein. We're going to take your funding away from SpaceX. Well, we're going to not send a rocket to space to bring the astronauts back. I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness. They're throwing toys out of the pram, and then those toys being multi-billion pound, intergalactic US government-backed projects. And you're like, this is just absolutely wild. And then, of course, you get the layer underneath of the people going, oh, well, this is 4D chess. they're putting it on. They haven't really fallen out. No, this is to deflate the value of the dollar, which means that US debt's going to go down. And then what's going to happen is Kush Patel's going to use this as an opportunity to actually release the Epstein files, which is going to do all this stuff to the Democrats. And no, this is genius. And then you've got Steve Bannon going, deport him now, about Elon Musk. And then you've got Elon Musk going, impeach President Trump. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Right now, EastEnders looks like Watch with Mother. So that's a lot to unpick today, isn't there? Woohoo! So we are going to chew through a lot of it, as well as the other news stories bouncing around today, which, quite frankly, if you have any bad news to release, today's the day to do it, isn't it? If Rachel Reeves is secretly going to hike up taxes, she should just drop that into the public domain today, because no one is looking in the direction of what the government's up to. If you want to have your 2-bit thrown into the mix and muddy the waters with your opinions, or perhaps provide a little bit of clarity and insight, 03444 1000 is the number to dial. It would be great to hear from all of you today, because a lot's been going on. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp. Or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. Keep it sweet, keep it short, keep it clean, keep it sane. Well, sane-ish. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Remember, you've got to write the word talk before you text. Otherwise, it might have its sort of US government funding stripped away from it and never make it down from the satellites from which it should ping to the mast on top of Talk Towers. Right, well, shall we start off with our focus more domestic, which the fallout of reform, whatever's gone on with Zia Yusuf is, looks like child's play compared to the other side of the Atlantic. But at a moment yesterday, this was the big political news. I'm pleased to say we are joined by Alex Wilson, who is a Reform UK London Assembly member, an integral cog within the machine. Good morning to you, Alex. How are you feeling this morning after all of that?
Well, I'm feeling very, very good about what happened in the Scottish Parliament by-election. A really strong performance, very solid third place, only less than 1,500 votes behind the winner.
That's great. I mean, we love the fact that there was a by-election up in Scotland and that Labour actually held on to the seat and all the rest of it. This is a fascinating political news, but not as interesting, I'm afraid, Alex, as Zia Yusuf resigning as chairman. So, I mean, what's gone on here? Nigel was saying yesterday, and I think a lot of this is no doubt true, that, Zia Yusuf was working voluntarily. It's a tough odd job being in politics, and I've noticed the amount of hatred that man was getting online and the sort of direction of travel some people were going down. A lot of people, deliberately calling him Mohammed instead of Zia and things like that. There was I would imagine that after all of it, it probably got to him, and maybe there was just political naivety there as well. Guess what, Zia? You don't report someone to the police, i.e. Rupert Lowe, and you don't turn around and call someone's inaugural question to Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs dumb.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in what you said there. And, politics is a really tough business to be in, as you know from your own experience, and I know from mine. You attract far more criticism and abuse than you do ever thanks. But Zia was fantastic over this last 11 months. The work he was doing, building up the structure, and also the team around him. It wasn't just him on his own. Also, the team around him at headquarters, building up that branch structure, getting us in a state where we were able to not just contest more seats than anybody else in the council elections, but win significantly more than anybody else. And really, really grateful for all the work that he's done. Very sad to see him go, but I think it feels now as if it possibly had been on the cards for a little while, and the PMQs thing was maybe the last straw. But it's a real shame. But the party will go on, and will go on bigger and stronger than ever, because the legacy that he's put in place is getting that team built. And getting that structure in place. So really what matters now, especially now we've got all these councillors, what matters now for the development of the party is really fleshing it out on the ground, winning those local campaigns. Well, as well as the Scottish by-election yesterday, there were a number of council by-elections, some of which we're still waiting for the results, but there was one in Frinton, in Nigel's constituency, where we absolutely smashed it, took the seat off the Tories. and came a very strong second in one in Horsham as well. So,
has there been any acrimony in this separation? My understanding is, Nigel said on Arrival Station, whom we do not talk about, that he'd only heard, but 10 minutes before Zia put it up online, that Zia was resigning. And I think Nigel says he's pretty upset by it. A great loss to the party, a great loss to public life. So was there any acrimony in this split?
Not as far as I'm aware. You saw Nigel's interview, same as I did, and he made it very clear that for the last 11 months, the pair of them have basically been inseparable, and both played a huge role in everything that we've achieved. And we're all extremely sad at what's happened. But what we can't do, what we can't afford to do, as with when there've been other departures, which you may ask me about, we can't let that be a distraction from the wider mission. We're on a mission to save our country. We're in a position now. The opinion polling very, very strong. The membership going off the scale. We need to harness that. Make sure we don't lose sight of the bigger prize, which is ultimately...
People looking in from the outside might say, yes, that's all very well. Reform are doing resplendently in the polling for an entryist party with 5 MPs. Even in Scotland, not normally a foothold for a Brexit backing entity, have done reasonably well. It became a 3-horse race, even though the party came in third. We understand all of that. But the narrative going around now in Westminster is, what on earth is up with that party that every 5 seconds someone's having a row, quitting, lobbing bricks at each other online? There ain't enough of you to keep having these issues.
Yeah, no, and it's incumbent on those of us that are left to make sure that this is the last departure, and that we do pull together and focus on that prize. I mean, you mentioned Scotland not usually being a fertile area. I mean, the highest opinion poll score that UKIP ever got in a Scottish national opinion poll was 7%, and we're on 21% in 2 very recent polls, and obviously followed that up with the by-election result yesterday. But you're absolutely right. We have to continue to work hard to keep the trust of those people who are supporting us already and extend the appeal to more people who can get on board.
The blue touch paper with all of this when it comes to Yusuf, it seems. I mean, I think there was some sort of hangover from Rupert Lowe-gate and quite how that was handled and who was responsible for what. But the big sort of blue touch paper in all of this seemed to be Burkegate, when he decided he didn't really like the cut of Sarah Pochin's jib at PMQs, called the question dumb. He did frame it by saying it's dumb to ask a question that, the government aren't even discussing, although I don't tend to disagree with him. She's got every right to ask whatever question she thinks is relevant, and it's clearly a subject close to her heart. Then there's been this confusion about whether it's party policy or not. Now, it might not have, no one might have sat down and wrote the manifesto and gone, right, this is going to be in it. But I mean, do you want it to be party policy? Where do you think Reform's going to go with this? Are they going to adopt it, or is Sarah Pochin going to be left looking like there's egg on her face?
Well, there's a long way to go until the next election and the manifesto that will go into that. So I honestly don't know whether something like this.
But you have a personal opinion on it, I assume.
My personal view. I mean, let's not make it about the burqa. Let's think about face coverings more generally. One of the things that really annoyed me most about the Conservative government and why I left the Conservative Party a few years ago was the overzealous response to the pandemic, with lockdown, and mandatory face masks was part of that. Human beings are social animals, and we need to see facial expressions. It's really, really important a way of how we communicate. So, I'm really not very comfortable about face coverings in public generally. As far as the burqa is concerned, I think, Sarah is a woman, you're a woman, I think you're probably in a stronger position to have a clearer view on that particular item. But generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of face coverings.
So would you, just to clarify, you would back a ban?
Well, I don't know. See, we'll have to see. But I say my starting position is not keen on face coverings. Right. But it's not a religious thing. Okay. It's a social human interaction.
I mean, that's fine. Look, it's slightly unfair of me putting you on the spot, because then you'll be accused of dictating party policy when it is not yet to be written, and that's understandable at this point in the electoral cycle. What happens now in terms of getting a new chairman? Nigel can't exactly pop down to political Costco and pick one up off the shelf, can he?
No, I'm sure he'll have an idea of people that he'll be talking to, because there are lots of people that want to get involved and support what we're doing now. The function of being a much bigger and more credible and more supported organisation now than we were 12 months ago. I mean, I think there'll be no shortage of people who will be able to step into that role and do a fantastic role, pick up where Zia has left off, continue building that really important, I keep saying it, but that really important local structure. That's what's driving us forward.
Talking about the local stuff, I mean, I'm glad you said that, actually, because what's now going to happen to Reform UK Doge? Because, is it Nathaniel, what's his name now, Nathaniel Freed, put on X that, and again, a sort of, I think a sanely worded statement. If Zia Yusuf's gone, I suppose I'd better go as well, because he brought me in. I still think the Reform UK Doge team can function fine without me. Can it? Because that was a main pillar of the local government pledge, and if they don't stand by their word, and especially as a result of another resignation from the party, people are going to stop trusting whether Reform can deliver and potentially start looking at Reform a bit like the Conservatives and think, well, you're so engulfed within internal battles, you're unable to get the job done.
You're right. It was a central part of what we pledged to those areas that voted for us, and there's 10 county councils that we won control of just a month ago, and it's going to be an important part of delivery. And you're right, we'll need to find somebody to take up that mantle as well. I'm sure we will, and I'm sure we'll have someone very competent, very credible to drive that process forward, precisely because we all know how important it is. I'm glad you mentioned the Conservatives, because they're obviously ecstatic about what happened yesterday. But let's not forget, since 2022, they've had, 4 or 5 leaders, they've had 7 different chairmen. So the idea that, reshuffles and people coming in and people going out is exclusive to us is simply not true. All parties go through this. We're going through it. We were a small party, we're growing very, very quickly. You could say that some sort of growing pains might be inevitable, but what's really important for us and those that are still here and battling on, we are going to keep taking the fight to the other parties. We're going to keep taking the fight to the country as a whole, get people interested, get people engaged, because people are, as you say, fed up with the other 2 parties who've promised things and not delivered for far too long. We have a huge opportunity here to really break the mould of British politics, and it's up to all of us who are still within the party to make sure that happens. And
would you want to be party chairman?
I've got more than enough on my plate holding Sadiq Khan to account at the moment. My God, there's a lot to hold him to account for.
Yeah, Alex, the one thing I always thought was Zia Yusuf is a young man, a very independently wealthy man. Why on earth do we want to volunteer as a party chairman? It's a thankless task. Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member, thank you ever so much for joining us today. OK, we're going to take a short break now. What's your reaction to what's gone on in Reform UK? Is it teething problems? Has it dissuaded you from backing the party? Are you now thinking, woof, well, that's a sigh of relief, because you kind of had a feeling that things weren't right there anyway? I want to know, because everyone, not everyone, but a lot of you who listen to this are very Reform-centric, so I'd like to know what your take on the situation is. The number, 03444 99 1000. Let's have a chat about it, shall we? You can WhatsApp me on that number as well, or leave me a voice note on that number. Text me on 87222. Right talk before your message. OK, I'm going to re-up my tea mug, and I'll see you on the other side of this.
do have to give Elon credit when it comes to the election of President Trump. Like he said on Twitter, he said, I don't think that he would have been elected if it weren't for me. There's some truth to that, because I watched multiple episodes of Joe Rogan where Elon's there talking about government waste. Then millions of people were listening to Donald Trump for the first time in these long format chats. I do think that there's some legitimacy to Elon saying, how ungrateful when I helped get you to where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, then, it is that moment in the show where we go to you for your thoughts and feelings on today's stories. And the top story today, of course, picking up on what happened yesterday while I was on air, which is Reform UK chairman Zia Youssef stood down, putting on X that I think is better use of his time than helping Reform UK become the next government. Sounded a little bit bitter. I mean, it didn't really sound very positive, did it? It wasn't like, oh, I've done as much as I did say. I've got, credit me of all the success of the party. But it wasn't sort of like, oh, thanks, Reform, for everything. I'm still wish the party the best of luck. It sort of didn't really have that, tenor to it, did it? And I think it took Nigel Farage rather by surprise. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Let's speak to Laura Jane, who's in Hampshire. Good morning to you, Laura Jane.
I'm still a loyal Reform voter and paid-up member, despite all the little bumps we've had. You have to remember that Reform has been growing as a party in the public eye. All the things that probably would have gone on with the Conservative Party all those hundreds of years ago, indeed with the Labour Party, the bumps that happened with Lloyd George, etc. These things happen, and the point is the message is still the same: vote Reform and get Reform. And I feel very strongly that it's sad. For me, losing Ben Habib was the saddest moment, but there are obviously things going on in the background which, quite frankly, are none of our business. The most important thing is to try and get a different government in, because this lot and the last lot were useless.
What if that different government seemed to have resignations and riffs every 5 seconds?
I think that we've got another 3 years for them to get stronger. They've proved it. They get stronger every minute, and I just think it takes time. 3 years isn't a very long time in the growth of a new party, but they're doing pretty damn good at the moment to be where they are, considering it's been a year.
But what about what seems to have sort of ignited this whole spat, which is Sarah Pochin asking Sir Keir Starmer about his views on whether there should be a review of banning the burqa, something that it seems Zia Youssef was very much against. And then the party go, well, it's not official policy. Do you think it should be official policy?
I think it's a really tricky one, and I do think that France has gone down the right avenue. I think it's incredibly difficult to understand what's underneath the veil, etc. And in this day and age, I think it's a very tricky one. We've got to be aware. You can't see through it. You don't know whether it's male or female and whether there's a bomb under there. It's going to happen at some point, and I think it was very daring of her, very brave of her to bring it up. And I understand the religious, reservations, but we've got to go there. We've got to look at it. We've got to discuss it. We've got to be brave.
Laura Jane, thank you ever so much for your call. Let's speak now to Andrew, who is in Hertfordshire. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning. Yeah, he's done a great job. He's moved on because, unfortunately, the Labour Party, funded by the unions, the Conservative, has a massive party engine. He's on his own. He's one person. He's a good man. He's done well at Goldman Sachs, but around him there was no support. So it'll be very wearing. And in relation to the lady's question, it's neither here nor there. The media and certainly the BBC and Channel 4 leapt on it. What she said in a post was, I will ask the people that have voted me in place what question will be my first question. So the public that voted her in place asked her to ask that question.
So why do you think Zia Yusuf called it dumb?
Because unfortunately, I wasn't in his head at that moment in time. He probably thought this alienates a huge part of the party and takes us down a sort of almost far right type. And I've cured that. You know, I've been in charge for a period of time. I've steered us away from that, and this seems to push us towards that. But what he and everybody, the public, don't like this, and they want it changed. And of course, Starmer will never speak to the public ever, because it goes wrong when he went to when those poor people had lost their lives. This is what the public, it's immigration, and this resonates with the public. It's not British, and people don't like it. Get rid of it.
Fair enough. Andrew, thank you ever so much for your call. Right, let's do some of your messages now. Alex, whilst I agree with banning the burqa, I do think that Sarah's question this week was unnecessary on the basis that there are more important subjects to question at the moment. War footing, Chagos conflict of interest and the strategic defence review. If Andrew's right, and actually this was sort of proffered by an exercise of reaching out to the people that voted for her in Runcorn, then clearly it's an issue that matters to her. I'm a Reform member. I contemplated not renewing my membership because I was so disgusted by the woke behaviour of Zia over Rupert. I'm glad I didn't now because he is gone. The party will now go from strength to strength, and most of the members who left will rejoin. His calling Sarah dumb was not only sexist, but also really disrespectful. And reading his resignation tweet screams, me. It's as if he was single-handedly responsible for Reform's success. I'm glad he's gone. Love the show, says Rowena. But, you know, this is it. Maybe it's that sort of opprobrium towards him that was so difficult. It's hard being in public life. If you've been independently successful and you become wealthy and you're volunteering for an organisation, and then all you're getting is endless torrents of abuse, it's very destabilising and demoralising. There must be a moment you just put your hands up and go, why am I doing this again? What is the point? Really? Do I want to be spending my hours in this position? Maybe that is what's happened. I do think there must have been, I mean, even Nigel confessed there was some sort of people management skills that were a little bit subpar. But look, he was a very bright man. A lot of people very much crediting him with the professionalisation of the party. I've met Zia on a number of occasions, and he is a phenomenal brain. He really was a great credit to the world of politics when you look at a lot of the dumbos out there in the other parties. But, you know, did he fully buy into the strong-tasting red meat of Reform ideology? I don't know. I'm not inside that, the internals of the party, but there were all sorts of feelings that were coming from the membership on this one. Let's have a listen to a voice note now. This is Tony.
To be honest, I'm very disappointed with the Reform issue. All the people that I like are leaving. I mean, I like Nigel, but I'm beginning to wonder if maybe Nigel is the problem here. Maybe Nigel's upsetting everyone. I don't know, but I am very, very confused now. I'm very worried about who to vote for. I just don't know.
I can understand that. I mean, surely if you are someone who backs Reform UK and it's yet another spat or quarrel or resignation within the party, you might start wondering, how does this keep coming to pass? Now, I just want to say something, though. I just want to say something, because I know Nigel personally. I've known Nigel personally for most of my adult life. I think I first met him when I was 21 years old. 20 years ago! 20 years ago! Can you believe it? And I've worked extremely closely with him. And what I would say about Nigel, as someone who knows him, is this. Despite him being such a rambunctious and strong leader, he's actually quite non-confrontational. He doesn't like arguing with people. He doesn't like fallouts. He tends to be a pull the shutters down character when things get a little bit tasty. And also is very sort of live and let live with people. When someone's given a job to do, he'll check back in what's going on, but wants to give people the full capability to execute a particular programme of work. And I think what this can end up doing is creating a situation where people can go a bit maverick or be working unilaterally and start making decisions or saying things that, you know, aren't necessarily harmonised within the wider party outfit. And And then because he doesn't tend to like confrontation or, attacking people or bossing them about that much, seriously, he doesn't, it can leave a vacuum within which people then feel like they're being ignored or not being listened to or heard, or where two people who frankly need their heads being bashed together didn't actually have that treatment. I don't personally, as someone who knows Nigel for a very long time, think that this is a man who likes falling out with people at all. I think it's quite the opposite. That's my view of the man that I know and have been friends with for a very long time. Other people might have a different experience of him. But certainly Reform UK has been, rather plagued, some might say, with a few bumps along the road so far, some teething problems. OK, right, before we go to break, I want to let you know about a little side hustle that I've been working on. If you've not been exposed to it yet, I have established myself a public house within which free speech is the order of the day. Have a look. This is the Common Sense Tavern.
What the CPS are doing is they're using public order acts as proxies for blasphemy law.
Today's guest is the wonderful Rafe Hadel-Mankhoon.
Second and third generation Muslims in Europe are far more radicalised than their parents or their grandparents.
I think one of the most preeminent thinkers on culture and society in the United Kingdom.
Then you have critical race theory, genderqueer theory, post-colonial theory, and if you link those all together with intersectionality, that's a very potent force for overthrowing the West.
This is the best pub in England.
What will it take for the British people to actually take action on this?
I tell you what, if you've not seen the episodes I've done so far on the Common Sense Tavern, we get our teeth into some really gnarly issues. I've been with the Geraint Dolan. We've sat down and spoken about Reform UK and all of the sort of, difficulties they have faced in the past as two people who were, UKIP, Brexit Party and Reform, the full sort of gamut of that process of Farage-led entities. So you can watch that one and see what he thinks on various situations. I've also interviewed a top demographer about, we've seen the Matt Goodwin report come out recently saying that we're going to be a British white minority population, potentially within some of our lifetimes. I've sat down and really asked questions about that, and I think that Matt Goodwin's anticipations are rather small c conservative, and we really get stuck into the issue of demography in a way that other people would not dare to touch. And then the latest, as you can see, is with Rafe Hadel-Mankhoon. We talk about everything cultural. It's basically free speech like you've never seen it before. And the latest episode drops on YouTube straight after I'm off air at 1 p.m. So do go and find it at talkTV. Right, OK, let's take a cheeky little break now. But when I come back, I'm joined by one of the most charming, tall, erudite, successful men that I know. It is the gorgeous Greg Swenson, who's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about, the battle of the Trojans going on the other side of the pond. That's after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You know, I feel like this morning I woke up with my hair sort of glued backwards like a dog with its head outside the car window. Such was the blast from all the sort of online scrapping. I don't quite know. The bombs going off all over the place on social media between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And I'll tell you what, when two egos that size fall out, whew, it's like nuclear war. I mean, Greg Swenson, what? What?
It was. I mean, that was one of the headlines in the Wall Street Journal today was that the fight went nuclear. And so that was unfortunate. I mean, it's being aired out in social media. It's very public. And, you know, the president is very transparent. It's maybe the most transparent administration we've ever seen. But there's some downside to that, and I think we saw it last night. So, you know, hopefully they kiss and make up, but there's...
You reckon that can happen? I mean, let's sort of unpick.
I think so, because there's so much at stake for both of them,
and
especially
order of events
Elon.
was crazy, though.
Yeah.
So it starts off, so let's backtrack it. Yeah. It starts off, Elon Musk doesn't like the big, beautiful bill because he says, I've done all this doging and you're just going to spaff it up the wall because you're going to just use all the money I've saved. And he's a libertarian, he wants a super small state. Donald Trump, meanwhile, is like, yeah, it's because actually we're taking subsidies away from EVs. And Elon Musk is like, I don't care about that. You can't buy me with money. And then the last thing, a week ago, it's like, bye, thank you for your service in the White House. Here's a golden key. I couldn't love anybody more than I love Donald Trump as a straight man. And then, all of a sudden, it's like, kaboom. And then you've got, you're in the Epstein files. I'm going to take government funding away from SpaceX. Fine. Well, I'm not going to continue with the project that gets astronauts down from space. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I liked last Friday more than this Friday, that's for sure. So, look, you know, it's a difficult moment. I don't think this is constructive. I hope that Elon calms down because he's got a lot at stake here. He's very dependent on China for inputs especially in Tesla, but in most of his businesses, especially on rare earth elements or rare earth minerals. So, you know, and Trump is very critical of China. And yes, he's working on a trade deal and maybe it all works out. But I think the hostility to China that Trump has had, you know, since the beginning, since 2015, is pretty deliberate. And that puts Elon Musk at risk. And then you have the subsidies that you mentioned, Alex, and that's, you know, that's a number. That's
I mean, this is where realpolitik and real life lock horns. You know, you've got a man who's saying this is what I want for the country, another man going, well, this is going to affect my multi-billion-dollar business. But, I mean, we both know they're also very disinhibited characters. Certainly, Elon Musk is an interesting one. He's never afraid to cause controversy online, and seems to me that he just sort of pings off all over the place. So he's a man who gets sort of easily distracted, has very high emotions, high passions. He is the world's richest, most successful man, so he's no doubt got an ego to match, probably feels rather invincible. But who do you blame the most in this spat? Because they both acted like an accelerant to the other.
Right. I mean, it wasn't, neither one of them looked great in their little spat. Okay, we understand that. But I think Elon has some points about the bill, if that's what he really means. The bill needs more spending cuts. But, you know, we conservatives want that, and we agree on that. But the president knows that he doesn't have the votes to go too far and too fast. He's only got a slim majority in the House. All it takes is 3 Republicans to flip. He's never going to get a Democrat vote, A, because they hate him, and they'll do anything to fight him, even if it's good stuff, or according to them. But also, you know, they will never agree to any spending cuts. So you have complaints from the right, from Elon Musk, from many conservatives. 3 or 4 senators are really unhappy with the bill as it is now. So many of us want more spending cuts, but we have to understand we can't have everything we want. It's, you know, you have to compromise at some point.
But
if this bill fails,
that,
it's a
you know, politics
disaster.
for those reasons needs to be a team game. You know, no one in any political party is going to love the entire manifesto. Probably not even the party leader. They probably had to learn the hard way that they can't get everything they want in life. But did Donald Trump pick his team wisely? Because we've seen all sorts of peccadillos and problems with other people in his inner coterie.
I think it's mostly with Elon, or at least in the last few days, obviously. But I do think there's a lot of support for this bill from people who understand that there has to be compromise. And that's, you know, I don't like everything in it. I would really prefer a lot more dramatic spending cuts, and the deficit's a big issue. But if the bill does not pass, it's a massive tax increase on the American people, which will end up being probably lead to lower tax receipts because of the damage it will do to the economy. So when we passed these things in 2017, they paid for themselves. We have 50% more tax revenue than we did 7 years ago. So we don't have a taxing problem, we have a spending problem.
I mean, there are some sort of more creative thinkers out there that think that this could all have been staged Sun Tzu style, that this is all a big spat because it's designed to really weaken the dollar, and that's going to help bring down and pay off US debt and help with imports or exports, whatever it may be, exports, and that actually they're best friends. And and it also is a great way to tee up the release of the Epstein files. I mean,
it's a pretty good theory. If it's a psyop, it's a pretty dramatic one, and I do think that, you know, there's some merit to that argument.
You do think there's merit to that argument?
You know, it could be. I mean, but look, the president. This is classic Trump. Okay, he announces something, or someone announces something about him. The corporate media in the U.S. and the Democrats go berserk. They have fun with it. They Trump derangement syndrome, you know, escalates. And then 3 days or 3 months later, everything works out, and he does have a plan. Now, I don't know that this one was pre-planned, but, you know, if he gets this bill passed, that will be a great success for the economy and for the American people. So,
but what now for Elon Musk? Because there was even sort of murmurings online, Elon Musk saying, I'm going to set up my own political party, I've got all the money in the world. I mean, that makes me feel this isn't so much a psyop here. When you're accusing somebody of having gone down sort of, you know, Lolita Island with Epstein, and that's why you don't want the files released. Well, this is pretty strong stuff.
Two reasons that's never going to happen. I mean, first of all, the Democrats did everything they could to get rid of Trump, you know, with the lawfare, with the weaponization of the justice system, with the assassination attempts. So if they were going to, if he was in the Epstein files, they would have been out already. Okay, they would somehow.
So why would Elon Musk say?
And the second thing is, you know, everybody knows Trump was involved with Epstein. Epstein was a member of Mar-a-Lago, and Trump kicked him out when the stuff about Epstein started coming out 20 years ago. So I think the slate's pretty clean with DJT on Epstein.
Does this come down to the fact that a lot of people fanboyed all over Elon Musk, thought he was wonderful, he could do no wrong? I mean, certainly in the UK, there was this sort of period of time where everybody was sort of basically online twerking in his direction. At Elon, have you seen this about the rape guns? At Elon, that. Everyone just wanted Elon Musk to retweet them.
And I think he did a great job. I mean, it was great having him in the White House.
Fundamentally, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a man with Lord knows how many different kids by different women, and most of those women say you don't actually ever want to speak to your kids or look after them. There was plenty of footage of him at various things, you know, at the sort of pomp and ceremony that's happened over time, where he looks like there are flies buzzing around his head. Is this actually fundamentally a bit of a nut job with a drug habit?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's an incredible business person and creative, and you know, you're going to have some eccentricities with people like that. I mean, I don't think you get to be Elon Musk without being a bit of an oddball. And so a lot of that is positive, and he brought a really refreshing view to government, and what I think what he did at Doge was quite successful. It's polling really well. The same people that criticized Doge for all these draconian cuts, and you're taking away people's, you know, food and medical research, they're the ones that are now criticizing it because it only cut $150 billion, and he only found $150 billion in savings. Well, it's a process. It's going to take some time. You know, is he a bit frustrated with, you know, the lack of discipline in the bill? Perhaps, but he's also got a lot of subsidies to Tesla that are coming out of the bill. And also, as I mentioned, this dependency on China is not consistent with President Trump's view on China.
It seems to me that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are very similar characters. Very similar characters, both eccentric, both steel-willed, both hugely successful, take no prisoners. And despite people sort of saying that Trump is quite mercurial, I think the interesting thing about Donald Trump is he does seem to forgive quite quickly. J.D. Vance's best mate. J.D. Vance spent a great period of time slagging him off. And do you think Elon Musk is the same? And actually, there might be light at the end of the tunnel where they just go, well, that was a bit stupid. We got a bit carried away. Let's kiss and make up.
I think so, and I really hope so, because it would be better for both of them. And I think, you know, again, Elon's done great work for the government, for the country, and can continue to do that, not day to day, not, you know, full time, but I do think having him on side would be better. And, you know, it's a coalition. You want to keep the coalition together.
Do you know what? I reckon that Joe Rogan should do a special episode, bring them both on, because otherwise someone's got to decide who gets custody of Joe Rogan. I feel for Joe right now, poor man.
The competition.
Yeah, exactly. Greg, we're going to take a short break now. But listen, I want your thoughts on all of this. 03444991000 is the number to call. You can also use that to send me a WhatsApp or indeed leave me a voice note. Some pretty staggering scenes unfolding overnight. Someone's messaged me going, hi Alex, it's tough with the Elon and Trump thing because I love them both. I just want both of them over in the UK in government instead of the shambles we have currently. Love your show so much. I mean, well, I don't know how Britain would respond to a spat of that proportion, that's for sure. We're a bit more stiff upper lipped over here, some might say. But anyway, let me know your thoughts. 87222 if you would like to send me a text message. If you are going to do that, then you have to write the word talk before you type out your smuzz. I'm on X at talkTV, and we're back after this.
Musk is saying he is going to, in effect, take offline. You've got Steve Bannon, who, as you know, is a big supporter of President Trump, who's suggesting that Trump take over SpaceX. I'm not quite sure what the authority would be to do that, but take over the company so that that doesn't happen. This is a total mess.
Yeah.
And as I said at the beginning, you know, in terms of a tabloid type story, a sensational type story, I don't think you can beat this one, can you?
No, I don't think you can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. As promised, it is your messages and your calls right now, so let's hit up them phone lines and speak to Tristan, who's in Bedford. Good morning to you, Tristan.
Morning, Alex. How are you?
Yeah, I'm quite jolly. I'm quite well. How are you?
Not too bad. As I was saying to your researcher, with these, I suppose you can say, bumps in the road that keep happening with reform, it does make me feel a bit more cautious. I mean, I've not really been interested in politics that long. Well, when I was a Conservative member, one of the reasons why I decided to cancel my membership is because I felt uncertain because there was a lot of friction within the party. And I'm scared that Reform's going down the same route, considering, they've got a lot of support in a very short space of time. And, as I said, these are bumps in the road, but they just keep happening a bit too regular. I will keep supporting Reform, but it's just a case of this is going to be something that continues and repeats and repeats and repeats. So, we just sort of have to wait and see. But it does make me feel a bit...
Right, I mean, do you think it's sort of the case that a divided party never wins? And for you, it'd be a 3 strikes and you're out type scenario where, there's been the Rupert Lowe situation, there's been Nazir Yusuf stepping down. One more reason for you to lose faith and you might be withdrawing your support from Reform UK.
It depends about the time, as I said. If it's something that repeats in a short space of time, then it does make me feel with caution. I mean, I'm a Reform member. I totally support them. I support, their policies. That scrapping net zero is something that is huge for me. And I feel they're doing everything right, but they just keep having, these issues that then someone decides to, I've had enough, and then they decide to leave. But what Sarah Pochin asked was absolutely legitimate. Considering we have a very lax immigration policy, any common sense would see that a burqa ban would be a good idea, and considering other Muslim countries even implement that law anyway. So it seemed like a totally legitimate question, and the right question, to be honest with you, because it's the sort of question that other people in the Commons gasped. So it was the right sort of question that needed to be asked, and it's a sort of conversation that should be happening, considering we have this very lenient immigration policy. So I don't understand. I don't know the ins and outs of obviously why Zia decided to leave. If it was just down to that, then I feel, that seems a bit questionable, to be honest with you, because it was a legitimate question to ask. And
I perfectly agree. And I don't think, unfortunately, because of all the fallout that's happened, no one's turned around and pointed out that it seems to me that Sir Keir Starmer has no answer to everything other than saying Liz Truss. Anything that happens, he says Liz Truss.
He doesn't answer absolutely anything. It's quite unbelievable, and he lies on a daily basis. He's what I call a pathological liar. And he seems absolutely fine with it.
He's many things, that man, but one thing that he definitely is not is charismatic. Kristen in Bedford, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Ben, who is in Bristol. Hello.
Hi, Alex. Just wanted to congratulate you on your baptism. God bless you. May the Lord raise you up as an Esther in your time, in your day, and as a voice. Yeah, I just looked very carefully at these results, the election results last night, which they're spinning as a big win for Labour.
Oh, up in Scotland?
Reform, they nearly won that thing last night.
It was very tight at the top,
wasn't it? What? But this is my point, yeah? And this is happening all the time. If you get the Tory vote, there was 1,600 people voted Tory. If they'd have voted for Reform would have won that election. They only lost by 1,500 votes. This happened in Bristol, where I live. They could have won the mayor seat in Bristol if the Tory people... What is it about this Tory party? It's like a cult. Why can't people leave? Why can't they see that they don't have the right ideas? Why are people so set in their ways?
Do you think that people who might be looking at Reform going, well, that actually is my hymn sheet and I'd be better off there because they're clearly in the ascendant, whereas the Conservative Party seems to have crashed and burnt and are smoking roadkill at the side of the M25. Do you think the problem is they look at Reform and go, I'm going to join, oh no, actually it looks a bit manic in there?
It's something weird about the Tories. Why can't people who seem decent, like Suella Braverman or Jacob Rees-Mogg, why can't they leave? It's like the mafia or something. It's like
Hotel California.
They cannot leave the Tories. And why are the British people so thick that they can't figure out to vote for a party that has common? If you like the Tories,
I like the cut of your jib, but I ain't going to go. I'm not going to allow anyone to call our British people thick. Don't you do that. You know they're not really.
Well, look, why are they so ill-informed and slow to come to logical conclusions?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you what it is, Ben. Not that many people are politically interested, is the truth of it. I mean, I'm going to use my brother as a fine example of this. My brother, a highly intelligent man, as you would expect, loves his country, always votes. But sometimes, you know, when I go and my brother comes to see me or I see him and I say, oh, what did you make of the thing about Rupert Lowe? And he's like, huh? Who? What? You know, I think a lot of people out there don't necessarily do what we do, which is follow politics as a passion. A lot of people just pick up political vibes. And, you know, each to their own. I don't watch football. I think it's a waste of my time. There's better things I can do with my eyes. But a lot of people out there say it's the best sport in the world. So what do I know? Ben in Bristol, thank you ever so much. Let's speak now to Herbie, who's in Harrow. Hi there, Herbie.
Yes, good morning to you. It's a shame that Yusuf is gone because, unfortunately, culture changes are taking place and we're all human beings and we don't always agree with everything that goes on. You know, the way life is changing is colossal to everybody, I think, at the moment. It really is. We don't always accept what happens. We just have to grin and bear it and hopefully work with it if we can, you know, and put things to one side if possible.
Well, do you know, that's what I always think in life. Life is full of twists and turns and bumps, and humans are fallible and fragile. And guess what? People make mistakes. People have arguments. But it's from that we grow and we learn. When things happen, you look back in retrospect and go, well, that was a screaming dumpster fire. I don't want to be back there again. Therefore, I'm going to resolve to make sure that this never occurs again. I'm one of those people, right? I'm sort of like, let it crash and burn because you have to destroy in order to rebuild. I'm a big believer in that as a mantra, that, you know, don't stop thinking about tomorrow, as Fleetwood Mac would say. And I'm a problem solver. I think that anything, however ugly and grotesque and challenging it may seem, can be traversed with a little bit of brain power and a little bit of resolve. Do you think that is the case with Reform UK, that actually after this, after the Rupert Lowe thing and the Zia Yusuf thing, they're going to go, right, this is it now, this can't happen again, and it's going to actually bring about a cultural change within the party that engenders a little bit more harmony?
Well, yeah, I think it will do. I mean, to say we're all adults and we all have to face life as it comes, as it hits us. You know, nobody knows what's around the corner for any of us. But I hope it can grow bigger and better and learn from mistakes that may be made. We don't live in a perfect world any longer. The world isn't perfect. It's got loads of problems, loads of issues, and we're not always going to come up with the right ones and the right answers. But we hopefully can work with it so that we can make the world a better place if we can try and get that right.
Oh, honestly, this sounds like the sort of lyrics of a Michael Jackson song from 1992. Herbie, thank you ever so much. I love your optimism, and I tend to share in it. I'm a huge optimist myself, and always think that don't look back in anger. Work hard, fight. You know, don't let anything deter you from the path you wish to be on. Let's do some messages now. Linda in Cumbria says, sad to see Zia resigning from Reform UK, but we will move on and gain ground in Scotland and Wales and win the next general election. There you go, positivity. I'm a big fan of that. They should ban the burqa, says Debbie. It's misogynistic and controlling. Nothing to do with religion. It's culture. Well adopted, our culture in our country. I agree. I think it's a symbol of Islamism. I don't think we should allow Islamism here. You want to be a Muslim? Crack on. Practice. Yeah, that's your business, but I don't think we should be pushing or allowing what I think is intolerance to be tolerated. We don't dress our women up as ghosts. Similarly, we don't stone them, and we don't like Sharia law. And I'm afraid the burqa is a thin end of a wedge. You don't tend to get the sort of moderate Muslim who doesn't believe in all of that, you know, medieval brutality, asking his wife to dress up like a ghost. Right? Very simple. Let's have a little voice note now from Carl.
I'm not being funny. People need to just chill out. There's like 4 years left to the next election. Reform have only been going just over, 12 months? Still teething problems. Yes, so what? Somebody's left. It's no big deal. I still support what they're trying to do. And I think Reform voters will all stand by them. Yeah, the left will enjoy it and get a bit of fun out of it for the next week, and then it'll all be forgotten, and then Reform will carry on surging in the polls. Not worried one bit. If Zia wants to leave, good luck to him. See you later.
I love that. Everyone should just chill out. But I agree with you. You cannot take fully fledged human beings who are adults, who've got their own baggage in life, their own opinions and ideologies, fuse them together and just expect it all to be plain sailing. And before social media, there'd have been no end of fallouts in political parties that never saw the light of day. Get on with getting on, is what I say. Right, on that note, I'm going to take a short break now, but don't go anywhere because I'm with you till 1.
been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the Pip Parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I'll do, mate, I'll shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed whack the rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour Ghost Train.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to the show on what is a busy morning of mopping up because there was a lot of spillages last night. Certainly a lot of unwanted odours wafting away on social media and in terms particularly of what went on over in America. Wow. I mean, when two egos blow up, don't they blow? It made Mount Etna look like, I don't know, a molehill with a cigarette stub on the end of it. Boom! You on Epstein Island, I'm not going to give money to your multi-billion-pound space project. Fine, I won't pick up the astronauts from space. It was like a fallout in a nursery school, whereas two adult, men chuck in the most expensive toys in the world out of a pram. I couldn't quite believe my eyes. I was absolutely mesmerised by it. I was supposed to be doing other work actually, and I was sitting on my sofa thinking, I just can't take a break from this. I've got to be all down X. I've got to go down every single avenue. What is going on? And you know what? I wish there was some sort of timeline of all the things that happened. There was one particular article in a newspaper that was trying to mop up the sort of volleying of insults and abuse online as it was breaking, and it was sort of like, yeah, Epstein this, oh yeah, multi-billion pound this, yeah, well that, and then Kanye West says, I'm like, here we go, that's going to make everything make sense, throw in a bit of yay. Honestly, it was like, it made like I said earlier, it made EastEnders look like Watch with Mother. But hey, I can't help it. It's a bit like motorsport fans do secretly watch Formula One, kind of wanting there to be an incident. No, we don't want drivers to die, but when there's a pretty gnarly crash, we're like, woohoo! And I must admit, when you are a journalist and there's fireworks going off and big breaking news, it makes the job a bit more enjoyable in a sort of, it's not a schadenfreude, it's kind of, It's a bit boring when you have to sit there just talking about the economy all day long, isn't it? I like a good spat to sink my teeth into. Right, now, on that note, let's speak to Reform UK activist Myron Senthil-Nathan. Myron, great to have you back on the show. What did you make of everything that went on yesterday?
Well, I was reading a tweet quite recently. The Conservative Party, since July 2022, have had about 7 chairs. That's a new chair every 5 months. Since then, they've had 5 leaders. That's a new leader every sort of 8 to 9 months. So I think what's happened with Zia is regrettable. It's sad, but nonetheless, it's a storm in a teacup relative to the Conservative Party. And, you know, when you're looking at Kemi Badenoch leaving potentially by the end of this year, compare that to Reform, who've got the most stable leader possible in Nigel Farage. So I think, yeah, they're teething problems. It's regrettable, but I actually think it's a positive going forward, because I think it will actually, we can build on what Zia's done, and there were mistakes made as well. And I think that those mistakes can be corrected and we can take things to a whole nother level.
I like it when people just look on things and go like, right, that was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? Let's move on. I just think it's a healthy way to be. Right, now, let's talk about other stories, because we've been chewing over Reform UK for the first hour. Let's look at other things that have made the press today. Turns out that illegal immigrants are now smuggling themselves into Britain in lorries. Once upon a time, there were sort of constant checks on lorries crossing the border, which happens, of course. The UK border is over in France and the French border over in the UK. But Albanian gangs have found a canny little way to get around this, which is booking a ferry ticket, chuck in some sort of paid-for traveller in the boot of the car, because, you know, cars are only spot-checked at random on the ferry. And once they are then on the ferry, out pops a person from the boot when they've given the all clear, and they then scuttle around trying to find a lorry to break into to then get into the country. I mean, this is the thing. It's like whack-a-mole, isn't it? Whatever route is dealt with. At one point, I remember every 5 seconds, some sort of migrant on the tracks of Eurostar, and then they built a sort of cocoon of wire mesh and scary looking, you know, barbed wires around the railway tracks, and that stopped happening. Then, of course, it was all about lorries, so every single lorry was checked. Now it's going to be smuggling people in the boots of cars, but we can't afford to have the Border Force checking every single car. No one would ever get on the blimmin' boat.
Yeah, so I think we have to focus on the boats, because optically, at least, the symbol of the porous border in the UK and the endless streams of people coming across the channel, that is what is causing the British public to become disheartened and to actually feel like the social contract is being completely obliterated. Then we need to start going into the illegal crime scene, the Deliveroo drivers, the kind of the car washes, the barbers, and all of these things. We then need to start putting immense fines on businesses and the penalties on employing illegal migrants, so that you actually break the whole infrastructure and the pull factor that is causing these migrants to find whatever way possible into the country. So it's not possible to check every single car, lift up the bonnet of every single car and check everyone coming through France. I get that, but we need to make it so unpalatable, so hostile for anybody who is actually thinking or entertaining the possibility of getting an illegal migrant in their business or part of their world or their infrastructure. And I think if we do that, that is the way to actually de-incentivise the situation.
I'm going to ask you this, because I know where I stand on this, which is if you've committed a crime by breaking into a country, you deserve what's coming to you. For example, if I decided to just, I don't know, go to the Punjab and try and get from India to Pakistan, I'd probably not live to tell the tale. I'm not advocating that should be the government approach to all of this, but it does strike me as rather demented to have people busting into your country illegally and then actually going, here you go, here's a little guidebook, here's some cash and here's a hotel. But at the same time, people would say some of these people are desperate and in need. You can't treat them like, you know, in a dreadful manner. So where is that happy middle ground?
Well, if you have legal migration at net 1 million or net 400,000, whatever it is, which is unbelievably and astronomically too high, if you have porous borders everywhere, if you have a Home Office that cannot process asylum or is processing claims and giving almost 70-80% approval to just about anybody who comes in and applies for asylum, if you have a broken judicial system with the ECHR and constant appeals being allowed and people being allowed to stay, that is a system that is utterly broken at every level of the whole concept of migration, whether it's legal or illegal. We have an economy that relies dysfunctionally like a drug addict on illegal migration. So if that's the context that we're dealing with, given that context, we do not have the luxury of being overly liberal or sympathetic or compassionate to people coming in, because we are in a situation where if this continues, we will lose this country culturally, economically, crime and everything else. The next 4 years are going to push the country on a cliff edge, and we have to sacrifice this overly liberal, overly compassionate mentality towards our borders.
Now, Kemi Badenoch at the moment is giving a speech as we're on air in which she's kind of going to outline plans to maybe leave the ECHR. I mean, it didn't really sound very convincing to me. She does say reform of the ECHR is a lost cause. But Number 10's plan to deal with illegal migration is the idea of bringing about digital ID cards. Would you welcome that as an approach?
My initial gut reaction is to say no. I think the measures that I outlined earlier, that's an easy route out of the situation potentially, and it could be quite effective in terms of illegal migration. But the loss to civil liberty is attacking the social contract from another perspective, from another angle. And I don't want to see a society show your papers. I want to move away from this kind of a Big Brother situation with the state impinging on our civil liberties. I think the hard graft of cracking down on illegal infrastructure and illegal ecosystem is the way to go, and just be more robust when it comes to international law and legislation. That's the proper way to do it. I think that the ID cards is potentially just an easy way out that endangers and causes more problems elsewhere.
Yeah, no, the thing is, it's all very saying, oh, you know, you give, the people who've come in legally a digital card for them to show the proof they're entitled to things. The problem is it'll affect us all. It'll affect us all. We'll all have to start showing our digital ID cards, because otherwise it'll be like stop and search, won't it? Ow, disproportionately racially profiling certain people. So, you know, all of us who look, quite frankly, like we couldn't be from any other country, like me. You know, I look very British. I sound very British. My name's Alex Phillips. You can't really get more British than that. Would probably be dragged into the mire of having to demonstrate that I deserve to sort of, you know, get some services in return for my taxes every waking moment. Now, what about the leaving of the ECHR? Kemi Badenoch is making a speech saying she's increasingly of the view. Just say you want to leave it, woman. Now, what's this increasingly of the view that the UK should withdraw from the ECHR as she announces plans for an investigation into leaving it? Now, I understand why there needs to be a sort of closer examination on what it means. There are things like the Good Friday Agreement stitched up within the ECHR, and then you kind of, it's a bit like pulling on a thread, isn't it? You might leave the ECHR, but there's so much case precedent and a canon of legal history that have come before, and other things that have emanated from the ECHR that are now baked into statutes like the UK Human Rights Act, that when you start pulling on that thread, you realise that it's a bit like a ladder and a pair of tights. It keeps on going and it keeps on going and it keeps on going. But do you think it's positive that she's at least toying with the idea of looking into it?
I think it's tiresome, actually, because when it comes to net zero, you see her sort of coming out and almost tentatively saying, yeah, maybe, I think now is the time to scrap net zero. And then she starts talking about ECHR, and perhaps now is the time to leave ECHR. You can see she's scared of her own party. She's scared of her own MPs because they're so divided. I always say about the Conservative Party, they're two souls trapped in one body. And she's always playing catch up with reform. I mean, Nigel and Richard were campaigning of net zero, it seems like decades ago. They were talking about leaving the ECHR years ago, and she's just creeping up to the position. And whenever Kemi gives a big conference, I grant she's more sophisticated than Keir Starmer, but I still feel like I'm hearing the same kind of tone, the same kind of speech, which is this scared, anxious, tentative approach of maybe we should start doing this. And it's because, as I said, she has a divided party. She's still trying to work out her first principles, and she's worried about a massive fracture.
OK, so let's, using that perspective, which I tend to agree with, I just think be very clear about your intentions and say, this is what we want to do. We're now going to be doing the hard work into how that will be executed. But actually make a blimmin' decision. You can't just say, I might do something. That's not how it works in politics. But the problem is, one could argue that reform UK seem to have fallen into a similar trap of late. Sarah Poachin, in her inaugural PMQs, which was bound to get a lot of publicity, decided to challenge the Prime Minister over whether he would investigate banning the burqa on security grounds. Then the party sort of turned around and said, that's not really policy. And then you realise, even amongst sort of however many of them, that there's a bit of a schism. And then there's been this entire argument over mass deportations, with even, you know, Conservative Party starting to use that language. And Nigel Farage saying, well, it might not actually be possible. Kind of Badenoch-like, really, not coming out and saying, yes, that's what I'm going to do, but I want to sort of qualify everything first. Perhaps a tentative approach in politics is just being candid with the voter, or is it a sign of weakness? Because if it is, guess what? Reform UK seems to suffer from the same Achilles heel.
Well, I think Nigel, especially in recent times, has been pretty clinical. I mean, when it comes to deportations, I mean, he gave a whole press conference about deportations and outlined the case for illegal migrants and what he would do. So I think on that he's been pretty clear. ECHR, net zero, identity politics, all of these things I think he is really, really clear on. And I think, look, Zia has now left. I think with the new chair, I would hope there is all these kind of slightly grey areas where we're hovering a little bit. I think that will be consolidated into definitive stances and a definitive vision of where we're going. I mean, for me, the burqa is it's a no-brainer. I think we should be cancelling it straight away.
Would you want to run to be chairman, Myron?
Would you want to be run to be chairman,
No,
Alex?
I got a job here. I wouldn't be allowed. I'd have my guts for garters
I also have
News
a job
UK
as well.
if I turned around and said, oh, guess what, I'm going to go and, you know, moonlight as Reform UK chairman. They'd be like, right, taking you straight off air. And then where does that leave us? No one would get to enjoy this show.
Exactly. No, look, I mean, look, Zia, one thing you can learn from what Nigel was talking about yesterday is politics is relentless, it's brutal, you don't have a personal life, it's 24-hour news cycle, you don't get the praise you probably deserve, and you get all the abuse that you don't deserve either. And so you have to have a certain mentality, and you have to have a real attitude of service to this country. And I do think beneath, yeah, sure, people have got arrogance and egos and tensions and so on, but beneath all of that, especially in Reform UK, there is this ethos of we need to save and serve this country before it's too late. And I think that's what makes Reform different to all other parties.
I mean, is there anyone obvious to take the place of Zia Youssef? Because you can't exactly just sort of, you know, go down or put out an interview on some sort of jobs website saying Reform UK looking for a new party chairman. Please send your application into it. Kind of has to be, you would imagine, picked from someone on the inside who knows the mechanics, knows the leadership, has learnt the ropes.
I think that's true. I don't want to be too critical of Zia. I think he should be very proud of his contribution, and I applaud him on his operational skills and his ruthlessness towards outcomes, which has really served the party well. But I do think there has been some casualties on the way, and especially amongst grassroots members, there has been a slight sigh of relief amongst some of the grassroots members at him leaving. And I would hope that the new chairman who comes in starts to realise also that Reform is a party of the people for the people, and that this is, I understand the need for centralisation to manoeuvre the party in an ever-changing political landscape. However, we need to get the grassroots involved and mobilise them and get their voice heard as much as possible. I think if the chairman can do that, they'll be serving Nigel really well and actually transform the whole party to take it to another level.
That is Myron Senthor Nathan there. Sounded like a bit of a pitch to me. You never know. People are forgetting that Sarah Poachin asked the question that her constituents wanted her to ask. We that used to our MPs doing the opposite, says Jacqueline in Liverpool. Alex, as a member, Zia leaving is good. Reform has got to sing off the same hymn sheet. That's from Vinny. The question about the burqa was very legitimate. The problem is that absolutely none of the questions asked of Starmer get any sort of proper answer. A shocking misuse of parliamentary time, says Kenny in Perthshire. I agree with that. I'm actually sick to death of Starmer just saying Liz Truss in response to anything he doesn't want to answer. I think that Sarah should have been, frankly, Lindsay Hoyle should have said to Sarah Poachin, ask your question of the Prime Minister again. Because he did not even remotely answer it. You might say, we're not going to go down that avenue. Well, why? Explain yourself. Frankly, if someone ceases to support a party because someone resigns from a particular role, then they won't support any political party for long. If they leave, so what, says Richard in Scotland. OK, we're going to take a short break now, but when I come back, I'm going to be joined by one of my favourites, is Adam Coleman, who's a columnist at the New York Post, and he's going to unpack whatever went on in that very public, very brutal, very eye-opening spat between the two big dogs themselves. It's the end of the White House bromance. Dark MAGA has left the building. We're discussing that after this.
Why is there this unique obsession with victims in Gaza?
Britain is the direct contributor to the war effort that Israel is.
1% of weapons used by Israel.
Britain isn't contributing to what's happening in Sudan.
We don't care about those babies dying.
It's not that we don't. It's not that we don't care.
We don't care about it. It's not on the. Are we discussing it now?
The main demand of the demonstrators and the protesters is that Britain stops its complicity in the genocide.
If it was a genocide.
Again, this is you're still that Japanese fighter fighting. That
no, I just know
over.
What words mean.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now let's refocus our attentions on what turned out to be a pretty big, pretty public, pretty eye-watering spat between the two big dogs over in America. The bromance is finally over, it seems. People kind of predicted it wouldn't last long. Those two were dairy. He goes, that's never going to work out. But just a week ago, there seemed to be this massive love in Elon Musk going, I couldn't love any man more as a straight person than I do Donald Trump. Have a golden key way. We're going to save the entirety of Western civilization. And it descended into, you were on that pedo island. I'm going to take the money away from your spaceships. I'm not going to bring astronauts over. It just went mental. Let's speak now to Adam Coleman, columnist at the New York Post. Adam. Oh, I need to take a deep breath. I was glued last night to everything going on. Then Kanye West waded in. I'm like, this is like the most amazing thing I've ever seen exploding online. What do you make of the lot of it?
You know, they both have points. I understand why Elon might be upset.
Doge uncovered a lot. I'm actually very appreciative of Doge. They exposed a lot of inefficiencies when it comes to the federal government. Things that we suspected are actually much worse. Thanks to Doge, we found this out. But I do think that Elon is not understanding that this is actually politics. See, Trump is the head of the executive branch. He can allow him to come in and have free reign and investigate all these things all he wants. But when it comes to a bill or discretionary spending, that's not all him. That's not all Trump. So there are other hands at play. Trump isn't the one who crafted the bill. Now, because of Trump, and like most politicians, they're more pragmatic. As long as they get enough of what they want in the bill, then they're usually fine with it. But Elon is more of a purist. Elon wants what he wants, and I understand why he wants these things, but he has to be somewhat pragmatic about what's going on. There are attempts to have cuts. There are things that are beneficial within the bill. Just like most bills, it's not all good. And that's just what it is. There's a lot of outside influence.
A lot of people watching it would have been like, right, they've got a difference of opinion politically. In terms of Elon Musk and his business, things in that bill might have cost his business quite a lot of money. You can understand why he was rattled by it. But, what people would say is don't ever wash your dirty laundry in public. And this was more than just washing dirty laundry. It got so personal. It escalated to a level that I couldn't quite believe some of the stuff I was reading. Is there no one around either of them to snatch their phones off them and say, listen, just give it a rest, stop posting?
Well, especially on Elon's part, to be honest, when you leave out the accusation of, and by the way, it's already known that Trump has had associations with Epstein for many years, but there were things that people knew. Epstein was around everybody. There's photos of people back in the 90s hanging out with Epstein because Epstein was a socialite. He was around everyone. So of course there's pictures of Trump with Epstein, and Trump hung out with him for a period of time. But Trump has also banned him from Mar-a-Lago, right? There's a certain point where people found out the dirt and they left him alone. So when you leave it out there with no explanation, no details other than, quote, the truth will come out, then I have questions. If you believe that he has further involvement than what we know of, then why were you cool with your child hanging out with this guy who maybe had deeper associations, maybe has more feelings towards children like Epstein did? So you were cool with that then? Or are you just leaving this insinuation out there for people to pick apart? So I think this is much of Elon burning the bridge. Now, is it completely burned? I don't know. But I understand that Elon is an emotional person. At first he was saying he was going to discontinue one of the SpaceX programs, and now he's saying, all right, well, I'll hold off on discontinuing it. I think this is, for once, Elon is actually more emotional than Trump is.
Some might say, actually, he's more mad as a box of frogs than Donald Trump, which sometimes feels like it takes some doing. Do you think there's any way that this can be resolved? Because both of them are pretty disinhibited characters, let's say. But certainly Donald Trump seems to me to have quite a forgiving nature to him. People say he doesn't, but when he's like, I hate that Zelensky, and then he's like, yeah, we had a really good talk. And then it's like J.D. Vance is slagging him off and saying, JD, he's the future. He's, Donald Trump seems to sort of blow hot and cold, and even if people have committed serious offences against him, he sort of will go from calling someone a really horrible nickname to then being their best friend, or vice versa. Can you see any sort of routes to reconciliation?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Remember, it was little Marco Rubio, and now he's working with him. So, Trump doesn't hold as much as a grudge as people think he does. For some people, he definitely does. Is there a possibility? I think that this is more on Elon's side as far as reconciling than it is on Trump's side. Trump has stated, if I'm taking Trump's word for it, he has stated he was removing many of these things, including the EV mandate. And Elon knew about this for quite some time. So why is he acting emotional about it now? So I think much of this was pushed on by Elon's criticism of the bill, which is fine. Trump is up to and open to criticisms when it comes to the bills, but it went further. And so finally Trump responded the way that he did. But I also think that Trump, like you said, he does have a little bit of a forgiving nature, especially if he's being pragmatic and he sees that there's a bigger goal in mind. Trump 2.0 is a little bit different than Trump 1.0. Is it possible? I think it's more from Elon's side than Trump.
Do you think, just one last question, do you think Elon's all right? Because, you know, he's had that black eye of late. There's been some sort of press conferences where, to put it mildly, he looks a little bit spaced out. He does seem to have these flashes of obsessions that then he gets bored of very quickly. Yes, he's an eccentric. Many geniuses are an eccentric. But is there something else going on here that actually he might need a sort of arm of reassurance put around him and go, look, mate, stop knocking up random women, stop going so crazy online, you know, get a better night's sleep. You know, I don't know, is there a sort of a sense of someone unravelling a bit here?
I don't know about unraveling. Maybe we're just seeing more of the unraveling in public. This is a very public situation that's at hand. So maybe we're seeing more of it. But for all I know, this is how he always is. We just don't get to see certain glimpses of it. But I don't know. There are people who've made insinuations of it being something about substances and stuff like that. I don't want to dive into that because I have no proof of it. But is he unraveling? I don't know. I think he's always been a bit of this. He's always been a bit of emotional, overly emotional, running to the internet to spill his dirt. But this is just something really impactful because it involves the most powerful men in the world.
Indeed, or two of the most powerful men in the world. That's what made it so absolutely extraordinary. Adam Coleman, thank you ever so much. Always love catching up with you, and thank you for raising yourself from your slumber at such an early hour for me. It's really appreciated. We are going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to be talking, well, if things are explosive over in America, could they get explosive over here? A remarkable interview with Russia's ambassador to the UK, who blamed Britain for that brilliant attack that Ukraine carried out against Russian planes. I mean, they took out about a third of Russia's fleet, it seems, in an extraordinary drones flying out the back of lorries. But somehow we're the ones to be blamed for all of this, and the Russian ambassador to the UK is saying that we're risking World War III. We're going to be discussing that after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back to the show. Now we're going to poke our toes into the world of geopolitics, which is something I always enjoy talking about. It's not boring, it's blimmin' fascinating. Who knows when the world's going to go up in flames? Because I'll tell you what, you ask anybody, before World War I and World War II, yeah, things were getting a bit weird and a little bit spicy, but no one could have predicted what unfolds. You've always got to keep your eye on the various moving parts of the international chessboard. Right, I'm joined now to help me in this quest by Sir Richard Barron's co-author the Strategic Defence Review. And let's begin by the Strategic Defence Review. I mean, the Labour government adopted the lot of it without complaint. And thankfully now it seems that Starmer has agreed to spend the 3.5% on defence after bowing to pressure from NATO.
So, from the perspective of the review, we were asked to look at what does UK defence need to be in the 21st century. And with a lot of help, including from the Ministry of Defence, we've set out what is the most transformative change for about 150 years. And we judged that against a financial profile of 2.5% of GDP from 27-28 and 3% by 2034. What we were always clear about is if there was more money or events meant we had to go faster, go faster.
I mean, when allocating how resources should be spent and how much is needed, how complicated is it in the modern age when there are so many different strands of warfare? There's economic warfare, there's all the grey zone warfare with cyber attacks, forced mass immigration. How is it that when you look at these things and think these are all the things that threaten a nation's integrity and security, quite what the government needs to be spending and in which departments?
So you make a really excellent point, which is the defence of the UK covers all of these things. So going to have to spend money on cyber defence, on managing the manipulation in social media, and you're going to have to spend money on surveilling the pipelines that keep the energy flowing into the country and on our access to space and dealing with missiles and all of those things. So it is a very difficult judgment. And then just within the Ministry of Defence, the Ministry of Defence spreadsheet of the things it spends money on is probably about 100,000 items, something like that. So they're really difficult judgments just within defence.
Let's talk about sort of all the different various forms of warfare and the threat from Russia, because a rather fast, I mean, not sort of atypical of the sort of nonsense that comes out of the Kremlin, but rather interesting interview with Russia's ambassador to the UK, who has blamed Britain for Ukraine's very successful attack on remote Russian airfields that saw 40 planes destroyed. He's turned around saying, we risk instigating World War III. I mean, do you think Britain had anything to do with this?
So I'm just a man in the street, so how would I know? But from everything we saw in those videos, there was nothing that Ukraine couldn't do on its own. So it was very clever. The technology they used is entirely within the gift of Ukraine, and they obviously know where to go in Russia. I'm not actually sure that's the thing we should be focused on, because it's really interesting that Russia has singled the UK out. So why would you do that? Well, one reason would be because it's too big a thing to lay at the door of the United States, because that's a really big challenge. But what we want to be clear about is when Russia says this sort of thing, is it because they're about to do something else to the UK, probably in cyberspace or against our critical national infrastructure? Because Russia does see itself at war with the UK and the West. And we shouldn't take that lightly.
Let's talk about critical national infrastructure, because a lot of people out there might not realise this, but much of the UK's critical national infrastructure is at present unguarded. We know that the GRU tend to sort of use activists on the ground in other countries to take out arson attacks on various installations, be they sort of weapons producing installations. But is that our greatest risk now? We know that we've got the shadow fleet stalking the seas where Russia is illegally selling its fossil fuels in the middle of oceans. But also they're sort of dragging anchors along, trying to get at those underwater cables. Do you think Russia's actually going to attack some of our critical national infrastructure, and how might that transpire?
So we want to be absolutely clear on a couple of things. The first is our daily life depends on those cables that connect the UK to the internet. And it's not just the City of London, it's all the emails and other things, our WhatsApps. If they transit to and from America, they go over those cables. Our energy mostly comes through gas pipelines from Norway, and electricity connects us to Europe. And every single one of us that has a smartphone relies on access to space. That's the GPS thing that tells you where you are. So we rely on these things for our daily life. And we don't really protect them because for more than 30 years we didn't need to. And now, not least because countries like Russia absolutely understand those vulnerabilities, and they know But if you want to break the will of the UK to resist on any particular point, that's probably where you start. So now we need to do a much better job of defending our critical national infrastructure. And the review talks about the things that defence should do, but the Prime Minister's also talked about a whole of society undertaking, and that's the next conversation. What is it that citizens need to do? What is it that the owners of these pipelines and cables need to do? Because this is probably the most critical vulnerability, certainly the most urgent.
I mean, I'm going to take you down a slightly different path because it's always a popular topic of conversation, or unpopular, some might say, on this particular station, which is the threats posed at people who are not sort of identifiable entering the country illegally, and how much of a security risk this is. We know that today there's a court case taking place of 3 Iranian nationals who had plotted to bomb the Israeli embassy, and it turned out that some of them had come across on a dinghy across the channel. We've also seen coachloads of migrants being bussed into the Polish borders, rattling the fences with Belarus, potentially a master plan of the Kremlin. Similarly, I've heard from many people that Wagner mercenaries operate very happily in Africa, collecting a lot of money from enabling the mass exodus of people from war-torn regions there. How much is illegal immigration something that we need to consider when we talk about security, integrity and the defence of our realm?
So I think we can be clear about a couple of things. The first is countries like Russia understand that provoking strategic migration destabilises Western countries because they will send refugees, and it's very well documented, over the border to put great pressure on the cohesion within and between European states. So we're clear about that. Actually, the UK is shielded a bit because we are an island. The second thing we want to be really clear about is, yes, those migration channels, the illegal routes in, are sometimes used to bring in people who are meant to do us harm. These are agents of one sort or another. But actually, we should also recognise that in the UK and other parts of Europe, Russian intelligence services are hiring organised crime to do their work for them because they're under too close surveillance to do it themselves. But then we also want to distinguish from about what the military can do, what the military shouldn't do, because the migrants that are coming across the channel illegally in small boats are universally not armed. This is a civil problem that should not, in my view, in any way be militarised.
Right, so when it comes to if there's a change of government and the new Prime Minister said we want the Royal Navy to defend our waters and turn those boats around or block them from coming in, you would say, because you're in a position to sort of have an opinion on this as former commander of Joint Forces Command, that is absolutely unconscionable. The armed forces couldn't be used to do such a thing.
So I think it's a practical question because I don't think any government of any persuasion in this country is going to send the Royal Navy to sink boats of unarmed men, women and children coming across the channel. That would be a gross violation of our values, quite apart from the fact it would be illegal. So what is it that institutions like the Royal Navy should do when confronted with migrant boats? Because they can turn them round, but they'll just turn around again. So the problem to that illegal migration is a policing and a security and a social issue. It's not a military issue. It's not something the military would do well.
General Richard Barron, thank you ever so much for coming on the programme and answering all of my questions very candidly. We are going to take a short break now, but after we come back, we're going to be discussing a topic which keeps popping up. It's popped up in UK politics for the best of 10 years. Theresa May said she wanted to get rid of the ECHR and replace it with a British Bill of Rights back when she was Home Secretary under David Cameron. Remember that? That feels like eons ago. And that debate is still happening now. Kemi Badenoch has been giving a big speech saying that she's going to consider pulling out of the ECHR. She's now of the opinion that it can't be reformed, so she's going to investigate how to do that. Reforms like we're going to get out. We don't care, we're getting out, we're doing it. And the Labour Party saying absolutely not, but we do want to find ways to circumvent the application of certain articles contained within it. Which particular approach makes sense? What do they all involve? We're going to be speaking to legal experts. But before that, let me tell you about how you could have the chance to win FIFA Club World Cup final tickets thanks to our friends at DAZN. Here's everything you need to know.
Hi, it's Jim White here. Here at talkSPORT, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We'll sort flights, accommodation, and give you £5 spending money to spend however you like. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. All you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338 by the 13th of June at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on June the 18th.
This is a talkSPORT limited competition run on talkSPORT Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
If you're having a sick day or you're having a mental health day or whatever, you're not going to go to school and you're not going to go to work. And maybe if that's, happens to a few people once or twice, that's fine. But the numbers today show this is happening, millions of times. And what really worries me is not the sick days, but it's when the sick days become sick weeks and become sick months. Yeah. And then you're out of work completely, especially with these mental health ones. Often we know once people go off work for mental health, the chances of them going back are often very slim.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back. And something which this country seems to have been chewing over for a long time now is whether or not we should have an unelected load of foreign judges sitting in Strasbourg dictating what we can and cannot do as a country. The problem is, of course, it's couched in terms such as human rights. And when we were a member of the EU, we had to be a signatory to it. It's a different institution. It may also be in Strasbourg, but the ECHR isn't part of the EU, but it's expected of member states to be a part of it. So we've Brexited, therefore one might assume that we can also leave the ECHR. But can it be done? Is it as simple as all of that? Great, I've got a majority in Parliament, we're leaving it tomorrow. What will be the kickback from that? What sort of problems does that leave in its wake? Can we reform it? Certainly other countries in the EU, I'm thinking especially about Italy and Denmark, who have scribed a letter saying we cannot tolerate anymore that this court is preventing us from deporting people. We need to regain sovereignty over such matters. Well, can it be reformed? Or is it possible, a la Sir Keir Starmer, to just disapply elements and say to judges back here, well, look, you know, when it comes to things like Article 8, just, sweep it under the carpet. What's the point of having a court if you're not going to listen to its rulings? Or is the problem closer to home? You can finger point at the ECHR all you like, but very often it's High Court judges making these decisions. Whew, there's a lot to unpack there, but thankfully I've got exactly the right person to talk to me about it. It's Andrew Tettenborn, who's a writer and academic and a professor at Swansea Law School. Welcome to the show, Andrew. Now, this seems to be the tripartite choice. Do we leave? Do we reform? Do we stay? Which one do you think is the most valid approach?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the only valid approach is to leave. I think it's now becoming abundantly clear that the convention is making it very difficult to run any kind of decent immigration policy. It's interfering in a rather undemocratic way with a great deal of the decisions that the government takes as regards the way it runs the country. So I think the case for leaving is very strong. And of course, Kemi realises that, because Reform and their merry men have said, we will leave, period. Kemi would absolutely love to imitate Reform on that. That's the reason why we had the speech this morning from Kemi.
But when it comes to that, she talks about investigating the possibility of leaving it. I'd rather she just came out and said, yeah, we're going to leave, and now we're going to find exactly how we do it. Because it does kick up a few bogeys, doesn't it, leaving the ECHR? One being the Good Friday Agreement, whether or not that ends up, you know, being the baby being thrown out with the bathwater. Then one is also whether this sort of is the beginning of a thread, that you leave the ECHR, but then you've got all the sort of layers of case precedent, stuff put into statutes, the Human Rights Act, and it doesn't end up being the silver bullet. Perhaps politically one would hope it might be.
Well, yes, there are a lot of points there, but a number of them may very well be good. It may be, depending on how you read the Good Friday Agreement, that we would have to leave Northern Ireland in it. But I think that's very much a side issue. But the much more interesting point is actually how easy Kemi will find it to persuade the Tory party to have a plain leave manifesto. Because you pointed out, what she's actually said is not, we're going to leave, but I'm appointing a committee. Now, admittedly, the committee is high-powered. Lord Wolfson is an extremely sharp lawyer, and I think is not entirely friendly to the convention. What Kemi hasn't told you is why she's appointed a committee. And the answer is the Tory party is actually very heavily split on this issue. You heard Robert Jenrick and others saying it's time we went. What you haven't heard, came out actually in a report a few weeks ago, there are quite a number of Tory MPs who regard it as a red line that we stay in the convention, and they have made it quite clear in the lobby, no names, no pack drill, but they've made it quite clear in the lobby that if the Tory party commits to leaving, then they're upping sticks and leaving the Tory party. That's actually what is worrying Kemi. That's why Kemi has gone down this road of appointing a committee and just crossing her fingers that the committee will provide something so persuasive that the naysayers will shut up. Whether she can do it, I'm rather doubtful.
In terms of it being the silver bullet, leaving the ECHR, would we not still have our own sort of ultra-woke High Court judges and barristers, like Lord Hermer, for example, who are sort of seem to be constantly picking up cases that are sort of anti-Project UK, anti-UK PLC, and that they can draw upon previous judgments, or they can draw upon elements of the Human Rights Act, and frankly, it doesn't even need to get to the level that that, you know, some Hugo over in Strasbourg makes a decision, that actually a lot of these decisions are taken domestically.
Oh, they are, but of course, what if we were to withdraw? That would have to be combined with a fairly heavy legislative programme to make it clear precisely to what extent the rights that previously existed in the European Convention continue to apply. Because the government's objection, and actually my objection too, is that the convention, when it was set up in 1950, was actually quite sensible. The rights were fairly limited. They have been interpreted out of all recognition by an activist court. And certainly, I think it's that kind of interpretation which will have to be dealt with by clear statutory intervention as and when we do leave the convention.
So would that involve something like a Great Repeal Bill, sort of yanking out from the roots things like the Human Rights Act?
Oh, certainly you'd have to take the Human Rights Act out. In practice, you might very well introduce something like a British Bill of Rights, which, if you remember, was Dominic Raab's baby during the last government. But at least that way we can define what the Bill of Rights says. We can make it controllable from this country rather than by a group of unelected and unresponsible judges in Strasbourg. That, I think, is likely to be the way forward. And, you know, it's becoming sayable now that we should leave the convention. It's now time to think how we do it, and I think probably that's the way we should do it.
I mean, we can leave a load of activist judges behind in Strasbourg, but the problem is it does seem to me we've got many activist judges here who might also apply a bit of creative interpretation when it comes to the bounds that we set, albeit within a new British Bill of Rights. And then every single time any government, and we've seen even Sir Keir Starmer getting the rap for this, sort of talking about, right, you know, these judges need to rein themselves in a bit. They get accused of essentially political meddling in what should be independent courts. And you kind of think, well, if the current cohort of High Court judges has among them a lot of what seem like leftist campaigners, Lord knows what's coming up the generation below.
Well, that's an interesting question. It could be, of course, the generation below will be a reaction to it. But I think that's really the job of the people passing the legislation, because one thing our judges say is that they must apply British legislation, and you've got to pass the legislation in such a way that it can't be deliberately or destructively misconstrued. And certainly I think that's likely to be an exercise of considerable difficulty, but it's the only way to do it. Certainly saying to the judges, we'd rather prefer it if you eased off on certain parts of the ECHR without leaving the convention won't work at all, because that's what the Labour Party is trying to do. The judges will say, and actually quite rightly say, our job is to apply the law of the land and not to act on a nod and a wink from government. So government needs to provide a great deal more than a nod and a wink, but it can only do that if we get out of the convention, because if we pass legislation which is seen to be contrary to the convention, we end up in Strasbourg anyway.
Right, exactly. Now, finally, if we're talking about getting out of the ECHR, gutting our legal system of its remnants, things like the Human Rights Act and various case precedents, sort of maybe disavowing everything that has gone before, how easy is that going to be? Because I'm in the middle of buying a house at the moment and the conveyancing's taken an age. The law don't move quickly, does it? Every T's got to be crossed and every I's got to be dotted. I mean, this would be a pretty big undertaking, wouldn't it?
Oh, it is. Oh, it is. There's no doubt. And we'd have to appoint a set of very, very high-powered lawyers to make sure we got it right. It's not impossible. It can be done. But it's something that has to be done very carefully and very properly. So
Andrew,
to that extent, all right.
Andrew Tessenbaum, thank you ever so much for clarifying various things there. It's a fascinating discussion because, you know, when you hear politicians make promises, you always want to say, OK, that's great, sounds really good, but can it actually be done? Andrew Tessenbaum saying, yes, it can, and it's the only way to go about things. You can't just cherry pick, Michel Barnier's favourite word, the bits and bobs you want from the ECHR. You just got to get out of it altogether. Similarly, you can't write kind letters saying, please, can you change your judgments? They're a bit inconvenient for our sovereignty. But it has major footprints in our legal system. You cannot have legal decisions that have been made since time immemorial, 75 years of the ECHR, and not appreciate that they are going to be used as examples in future cases. So this is, it's almost like redesigning the entire house, isn't it? It's not going to be done in a day. Fascinating stuff there. But Kemi, just pick a blimmin' lane, would you? Conservatives still divided over the issue, it very well seems to me. OK, right, talking about divisions, when I come back, we're going to be talking about whether there is a reform, civil war, as the chairman's resigned over a burqa ban row. We're going to pick up again on whether or not Kemi Badenoch will ever make a decision on policy about anything within her lifetime by speaking with David Campbell-Bannerman, who's a former Conservative MEP. Before that, he was a UKIP MEP, and before that, he was a Conservative. He's been backwards and forwards, but he's also the chairman of the Freedom Association. He's going to be joining us after, well, these lot who are going to hopefully pay my wages. I'll see you on the other side.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I'll shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. And they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? It's 12 o'clock already. It's almost my lunchtime. Woohoo! I'm going to miss you guys, though. I was just saying the other day, you know, when life feels a little bit sucky, when things are sort of a bit doomsterish out there in the real world, in my own private domain, I come in here and everything's better again. I love it. I genuinely do love this job. And I love you guys. I love your company. It's really nice. On that note, that was a little bit of emotional blackmail. I don't know if you detected it. Women are very good at that. That means that I'm going to sort of beg and plead that you help me out, that you know, share some kindness and help filleth my cup today, because I love to hear from you. This is Talk. The clue is in the title, which means you need to open your big bazoo and throw some opinions about the place. That is your duty as a regular listener, to help me out. You know, share the load a little bit. You can't expect me to constantly do all the heavy lifting, can you? Go on then. You're tempted, aren't you? The number is 0344 499 1000, and it's your normal network rate. Don't cost you a penny more than you pay your phone company anyway, which is probably an extortionate amount. So you may as well use it wisely and spend it on us. You can use that number as well to send me a WhatsApp, 0344 499 1000, or leave me a voice note. You know how much I like those. If you're a regular listener, you know I even call them voiceos. And if you're a regular listener and you haven't done it before, why not? Why are you letting me down like that? Am I not worthy of just a minute of your time? If you would rather send a text message, the number is 87222, but you have to write the word talk before you then write the body of what you'd like to say. That way it can identify itself with a particular pronoun and wend its way into the correct box within Talk Towers. OK, so hopefully we'll be speaking to some of you in the next segment. So if you want to make your contribution, register your interest now, because the lovely Alicia might actually take a break from WhatsApp and pick up your call. I can see you, Alicia. What are you doing there, my love? Oh, yeah. What is it on that screen, is it? Oh, I'm only teasing her. She knows she's my favourite. But the lovely Alicia is ready to take your call and write down your number and give you a call back when it is time to go on air. We're that efficient, right? You don't even have to sort of be there like waiting to phone your GP on telephone tombola. No, we do all of that for you because we've got the greatest producers in the known world. OK, now let's talk about the news, shall we? And I'm joined now by David Campbell-Bannerman, who's a former Conservative MEP, before that a UKIP MEP, before that a Conservative, but also a chairman of the Freedom Association. David, great to have you on the programme.
Hi, Ali, it's good to be here.
Now, you have seen the rough and tumble of politics. You've seen the divisions in the Conservative Party, scrapping in that. You've seen the divisions in Nigel Farage's various parties, the scrapping in that. And now you've probably sat back with a big box of popcorn and watched everything unfold yesterday. And I want to know what your reaction is to it all.
Well, it's quite hard to keep up, actually, Alex. I mean, I don't know if I've got time for popcorn to sit back. Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, Zia's gone, the former chairman's gone from Reform. I think that's quite a major change. He credits himself with building up the party dramatically. I think there's probably more to do with Nigel Farage than Zia, but he's certainly a hard-working individual. I don't know what it means. I think they probably need a bit more stability and a bit more professionalism. You saw that in the Scottish by-election, to be honest, where, apparently sort of lack of campaigning experience did actually hold them back a bit. And I've seen that personally in elections where I've been involved. So Reform are a real threat to the Conservative Party, and they're doing very well and they're building very fast. And I'm afraid the Conservatives need to get their act together. We need more serious leadership and more direction.
So do you think, we're talking about serious leadership and Kemi Badenoch, is her speech today enough to sate the true blue grassroots? Because she sort of said, I've looked at this very carefully, I've thought a long time, and I think the only answer is to leave the ECHR. But she's not saying she wants to do it, and she's not saying that's going to be Conservative policy. It seems to me, yet again, sort of half-cocked, circumlocution on the issue. She's saying, well, we might investigate it. I'm going to create a forum of people who can decide. And my previous guest seems to think this is because there's a whole wing of the Conservative Party who consider leaving the ECHR a fundamental red line. And so they can't seem to be able to pick one side or the other. It's like Brexit all over again. Reform might have its issues, but by gum, the Conservatives haven't been able to get over theirs, it seems.
Well, I think you're right in the sense that, Reform has very clear policies, and we need policies. We don't have years to think of something great to come up, for the next election. It could be a lot closer than we think, especially if the government screws up as it is now and we have a debt crisis. The election could be a lot sooner. I welcome the sort of general direction she's going in, but I do think we need much firmer policies. We need stronger leadership. Leadership is about taking position and taking people with you and convincing them you need to do that in order to win elections and to win people back. And when you're below the Lib Dems in some polls. You've got to listen. You really got to listen.
I mean, you've sort of been on both sides of this. You've been in UKIP, you've been in a Conservative Party, so you have experience of, because you're a UKIP MEP back when I was the head of media. I remember very well. But you know, you've seen it all transpire from both sides. So you've sort of looked under the bonnet or been inside the vehicle of a Nigel Farage party, similar with the Conservatives. Do you find that there's sort of discrepancies between the way they operate, or is just both, you know, the rough and tumble of politics?
Well, I think, you know, Reform is a much newer party. I mean, it didn't exist a few years ago. Of course, you could say, well, it's UKIP, but UKIP still exists, by the way. I mean, it's very much led, you know, it is Nigel's party, and he's very dominant, and he does have a tendency, I'm afraid, to drive a lot of people away. I mean, I think we lost about 8 MEPs when I was a UKIP MEP, and I left, but I left because I wanted a referendum. I wanted to leave European Union, and UKIP then did not have any real policies, which I tried to introduce. But now I see, you know, Reform have learnt that lesson and are producing a few policies, and we've got to follow that. The Conservatives have got to follow that and ensure that we don't need a fully costed manifesto. I accept that. But what we do need is some policy directions, so our troops, our members, are actually G'd up and can, you know, are reassured we're going in the right direction, because they're not at the moment.
I mean, is this not the problem with the legacy parties? They're both in following mode. What's Nigel going to do? We're going to have to react to it, that once again this man somehow manages to steer politics on the sidelines.
Yes, I mean, well, he's always been brilliant at that. Remember, you know, he without being an MP, he worked to get a Brexit referendum, essentially. You know, he's been remarkably successful as what I call a pressure party. I mean, Reform is another pressure party, but it's a more real party, Reform, than UKIP. UKIP was about bringing pressure very successfully. But, you know, Reform is a real threat to both major parties now. I don't know if people are just seeing it as an alternative. They're very upset with Labour. They feel let down with winter fuel payments, all of this. And they feel let down with us. You know, our record, I'm afraid. We could have done better in certain areas, absolutely. But, you know, it's interesting. You know, policy could be the problem, because if you're trying to ride two horses, you know, going left on nationalisation or whatever it is, going right in other areas. Nigel is really a sort of Thatcherite Tory. That's his natural instinct. So it's quite a sort of difficult balancing act for Reform. We'll have to see how successful that is over time.
I mean, they seem to be very successful right now. You say that they're a threat to both major parties. I would say that both legacy parties are a threat to Reform. When you look at the polling, Reform's now topping 30% when it comes to projected vote share. The Conservatives are dwindling down below the 15% mark sometimes, and Labour a good 8 points plus behind Reform. But you say that Nigel has a tendency to fall out with people. Now, I want to address this because this is now being spoken very widely in the media, and certainly when you look at the empirical evidence of various departures from Farage-led parties, that is how it might seem. But my experience of Nigel, and you know, you've known him a very long time as well.
I've got a great deal of respect for him.
Yeah, exactly. My experience of him, because I know him super well, isn't that actually he likes picking fights with people on a personal level. It's actually the opposite. That he tends to be a man who sort of shies away from combating people tete-a-tete, and perhaps that then sort of, and also, you know, he very quickly adopts people and has great faith in them and says, I trusted you, go out and do something. Then you end up with people sort of making decisions unilaterally. I just want you to talk a little bit, because, you know, you say you've got a great deal of respect for him, you know him. Talk to me about how you would interpret his character.
Well, Nigel is incredibly approachable. I mean, I remember when Cameron was leader, he wasn't as approachable as Nigel was. I introduced people to him that were visiting, you know, Brussels, etc. He's very easy to get to know. He's a very likable guy, Nigel. I've got a lot of time for him. I don't like him wanting to destroy the Conservative Party. I mean, I don't think that's productive. And the question has always been, you know, how best to serve the country. I mean, I left UKIP to argue for a referendum. It was only because we got a referendum we were able to actually leave the European Union in the end. Nigel is very strong, very driven. Not everyone can keep up with him. I think you do tend to attract people from all sorts of walks of life when they're a new party. Not all of that works out. And I think that is a problem. You go a certain place down the road.
If you don't mind interrupting, I want to pick up on exactly that point, which is Nigel has a long time been a sponsor of saying we need people in politics who are from the real world. It's been his catchphrase as long as I've known him, and that's what he's done. He has brought to the table, rather than career politicians, people who have worked as spads and been local councillors and stood in 1,000 different seats to demonstrate their loyalty to the party before being given their opportunity. In the meantime, having whips that are able to, gather and retain a lot of skeletons in closets. Nigel's actually identified very clever people from the real world, people like Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib, Zia Youssef, brought them in and said, you're brilliant, I see great potential in you, go forth and prosper. But actually, maybe there is, from all of this fallout, maybe there's an argument as to why parties like the Conservative Party, like the Labour Party, seem to have a conveyor belt system that if you want to get to the upper ranks of the party, you have to have jumped through all these hoops first, because it sort of then does beat into people the collegiate mentality, the loyalty and the discipline.
Well, I think that's a very good point. I would say actually the Conservative Party has lost that. It's tried to bring in people with not the right experience, who've not gone through the loops. I had to fight a no-hope seat in Scotland, Glasgow, Rutherglen. I wasn't expecting to win that way back now, 97. But I mean, you kind of worked your way up and you got experience of politics. And I think that's very important. I mean, I know from Reform friends that a lot of people don't even know what a polling station is or whatever. And I don't mock that. They are learning, but they are very new to this, very green. And I think that is a major issue, but they have made a lot of progress very quickly. And in order to counter them, our party, the Conservative Party, has to think quickly about the broad policy frameworks, at least, and get that out to fire up the troops. And keep the MPs happy, because they're not happy at the moment, and that's the only way forward, And I want that reassurance from the Conservative Party, because if it's not given soon, we'll lose even more members.
Yeah, David, if you don't mind me saying, you sound like a man who could be tempted to cross the floor back again.
No, well, look, I've had some nice entreaties, but I want to stick with the Conservatives, but the bottom line is we have to raise our game, and we have to be more serious, and we have to be clear about what we stand for, even if it means we lose a few MPs that can't stand it, who are too, frankly, Lib Dem. I mean, the Lib Dems are doing quite well. Why don't you go and join them? We've got to sort this out, because otherwise, the party is just trapped in this position where it can't be, too right wing. It can't counter reform. There's a lot of nonsense arguments saying, well, we must, take on the Lib Dems. No, we've tried that. It didn't work. We ended up with coalition government. What we've got to do is believe in what we believe in, like Thatcher did, and actually get back to some first fundamentals. And then actually people will start coming back to us.
David, it's been fantastic having you on the programme. That is DCB, David Campbell Bannerman, once Conservative, then UKIP, now Conservative again. So he's had a real good insight into the lot of it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, woo, hallelujah, praise be the Lord, because there is signs of peace on the horizon. That is why I spy a dove in the distance, because a miracle may have happened. Get this, Donald Trump is going to hold a phone call with Elon Musk today, signalling signs of a possible truce between the two men after their explosive argument. The US president downplayed his public clash with a tech billionaire in a late-night phone interview with Politico. Oh, it's okay. Oh, it's okay, he said when asked about this. It's going very well. Never done better. Never done better. Relations between Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk have soured. It's putting it mildly, soured in recent days over the president's tax and spending bill, resulting in an argument that ended with Mr. Musk calling for Mr. Trump's impeachment and suggesting that he was part of, nefarious activities with Jeffrey Epstein. The Tesla owner also appeared agreeable to a truce on Thursday evening, responding to Bill Ackman's attempts to ease tensions. I support at real Donald Trump and at Elon Musk, and they should make peace for the benefit of our great country. That is what the hedge fund manager Bill Ackman wrote on X, and Mr. Musk replied, "You're not wrong." Oh, it's going to be the shortest breakup in history. They're going to get back together and the bromance is going to be back on track and we're just going to be like, woohoo! That is a pretty spicy relationship. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump is going to be getting on the blower to his old best mate, Elon Musk, after lobbing bricks at each other online yesterday. It seems that they want to kiss and make up. Watch this space. Okay, we're going to take a short break now, but after that, it's time for your calls and your messages. So if you haven't registered your interest to talk to me this morning, here is a moment that you can do it during the advert break. 03444 99 1000 is the number to dial. It's your normal network rate. You can also use that to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to send a text message. If you're going to do a text, you're going to have to write the word talk before you write the rest of your message. And we're on X at talkTV. Try not to lob any bricks on there. We don't want any sort of Musk-Trump moments. Oh, no, not here. We're a ship of calm on this Friday afternoon. OK, right, I'll see you after this.
I do have to give Elon credit when it comes to the election of President Trump. Like he said on Twitter, he said, I don't think that he would have been elected if it weren't for me. There's some truth to that because I watched multiple episodes of Joe Rogan where Elon's there talking about government waste. Then millions of people were listening to Donald Trump for the first time in these long format chats. I do think that there's some legitimacy to Elon saying, how ungrateful when I helped get you to where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, time for you to join the show. I'm never going to do that again. I've no idea where it came from. I think Ted has slipped something in my tea. Okay, let's speak now. Oh, she's a regular and I love her. Do you know, one day I'm going to have to meet this woman. She lives in London. It's Georgina. Hi there, Georgina.
Hello, gorgeous girl. Fabulous to talk to you. I have missed you. I've missed you, Alex.
I was here yesterday. Well, no, I'm always here every Friday.
Well, listen, I haven't seen you for a while, but I wanted to ring and say about reform. I think they are quite right to insist on banning the burqa, and all power to them for doing so. You don't know who's under those robes or what indeed they may be carrying. In essence, it's a major threat to our national security, Alex. Also, this is not conducive to this so-called cultural cohesion, which I'm letting you know now is not working. This is not an Islamic country, darling. We as a nation do not worship the Prophet Muhammad. We are Christian, as is our king and sovereign. This is UK, not Iran or Iraq.
I agree with this. Georgina, let's pick up on that, because, you know, I think it's always it's a sensible argument to make it on security grounds, and it's done deliberately so you don't have all the beardy weirdies out on the streets with their placards and their funding from the Gulf states. But the problem is, you are absolutely right. This actually is a symbol that runs deeper than all of this, because the burqa isn't a sign of Islam, moderate Islam, people privately practicing their faith. I can get on board with the odd hijab or two. Fine. You know, want to put a scarf on your noggin? Be my guest. But when it comes to the burqa, this is a very extreme interpretation of Islam, often connected to Islamism, often connected to exactly the sort of barbaric medieval practices that we as a country reject. Practices such as stoning women, practices such as putting the woman on trial if there's been rape, practices such as a woman's testimony is only worth half that of a man, practices such as don't speak, don't leave your house without an escort, don't listen to music, don't even show an ankle, things that are deeply injurious and oppressive of women. So whether or not people are like, well, women should have a choice if they dress up in a burqa, my fancy is this: most women, if they didn't have a controlling husband telling them to dress like a bimbag, wouldn't do it.
Absolutely. Well, if a rule of banning a burqa, or indeed, Alex, eating humanely slaughtered meat offends people, then this is not the country for you. And I suggest you find a country where you will feel happier. I'm sick to the back teeth of feeling if I've got to apologise for my beliefs and my culture. I'm Christian and I'm proud of it. And I refuse to say I'm sorry or apologise anymore. You know, these people should be making an effort to integrate into our culture.
Right. And that's it. I think if we don't take it, it's not about persecuting people of different faiths. I am all for everybody being able to have whichever faith that they subscribe to, practicing it privately, talking about it publicly. That's perfectly okay. But when it comes to customs that have been imported, medieval barbaric customs from another country, that is where you have to draw the line. And if you suddenly say that we're going to permit these very, very disturbing and strident symbols of another culture and another religion from countries that, frankly, we disagree with the way they go about their life, then you're being tolerant of the intolerant. Just as I'm more than happy for people to be Sikh or Hindu or Jewish or whatever, but when you come to Britain, there's an expectation that there is something that is British about the way we go about lives. We've got our own moral contract, we've got our own societal expectations and cultural mores, and you've got to adopt them. If not, get out and go back to whence you came from, because you'd far prefer to live there. And if we don't stand up for these things, we will lose them altogether. Georgina, thank you ever so much. Always love speaking to you. Let's speak now to John, who's in Dorset. Hi, John.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
I'm all right, my love. How are you?
I'm walking down the lane. It stopped raining and the sun is coming through.
Hey, nice that. Oh, I'm looking out my window, and you're right, actually. The clouds seem to have cleared. Maybe it's because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going to kiss and make up. A miracle is in our midst.
Well, yeah, basically, the reason I called, I heard your previous guest talking about the state of the Conservative inner sanctum. I mean, I joined the Conservatives in 1968. And for 54 years, I paid my subscriptions, I was active in the constituency fundraising, and 3 years ago, I heard Tobias Ellwood on LBC, where else, saying that people like me were the right wing of the party. And then I thought, well, where do we go? I've seen the party progressively liberalised by David Cameron, then by Boris Johnson, and they want him back. And you know,
Yeah,
the latest one
the
was...
Boris thing's really interesting, isn't it? Because the Conservatives always look to Boris as being some sort of, salvation. And yet the man's more Lib Dem than Ed Davey.
I mean, he's a rampant liberal. I mean, he can't keep... Sorry, I can't say it on air, but he is unrestrained in the nether regions. But the bottom line is that we had Theresa May. Oh, yes, she would respect the vote. David Cameron went where he didn't want to and lost, so he jumped ship. Theresa May, I mean, she did everything she could to keep us in, including Ollie Robbins actually overriding her own cabinet ministers, making decisions about...
Boris did make a sound judgment call when he suddenly went, I'm going to get on the side of Brexit. He weighed it up. He didn't really have a side before. He wanted to figure out what was best and most politically expedient for him. And he did get Brexit done, but on a lot of other things, well, he did stuff that I don't particularly agree with. John in Dorset, thank you ever so much. Before I play you a little promo, I'm just going to remind you of this because I love this. This is like the coolest thing that's happened. Apparently, Trump has organised an olive branch call with Elon Musk. Donald Trump will hold a phone call with Elon Musk today, signalling signs of a possible truce between the two men after, what was a pretty explosive and very public argument. The US president downplayed his public clash with the tech billionaire in a late-night interview with Politico. Oh, it's okay, he said when asked about the rift. It's going very well, very well. Never done better. Have to do the hand action. Relations between Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk soured in recent days. Again, understatement of the century. Over the president's tax and spending bill, resulting in an argument that ended with Mr. Musk calling for Mr. Trump's impeachment. But the Tesla owner also appeared agreeable to a truce. Hedge fund manager Bill Ackman put on X, I support both Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and they should make peace for the benefit of our great country. And Elon replied, you're not wrong. Oh, let's get back together. Come on. I mean, fights happen. People make mistakes. You can't just have two people with all their sort of adulthood eccentricities and peccadillos and bring them together and expect it to be happy ever after. This stuff takes work. It takes a want to reconcile. It takes remembering that underneath it all you need is love. Dun, 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 dun. All you need is love, love, and a make-up phone call. Thank you, Elon and Donald Trump, for showing us what is right. OK, now, if you can't get enough of seeing my mug on screen, I was part of Blank of the Week's recording earlier on, and that's going to be broadcast later tonight. Have a look. So Keir Starmer, the greatest feminist on earth, because he thinks that just shipping people in from countries that stone women to death and marry 9-year-olds and chop off their genitals and make them dress like ghosts is the best thing that can happen to womanity in the United Kingdom.
Womanity, good.
Womanity.
Like it.
And I mean, look, there he goes saying we're going to tackle the gangs. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, France today have said they're going to actually start intercepting boats.
Yeah.
What? Hadn't they supposed to always have done this?
Right.
And
We
yet
did
the
give
numbers...
them 500 million quid to do that, didn't we?
No, we gave them 500 million quid to buy coffee machines.
Oh,
Mike.
yeah.
You've got to be clear about this.
Okay.
The French do not do any work for less
No.
than at least $1 billion.
And never on a Monday.
Because of all
either.
those pensions that they've got to pay
Yeah.
for. You know, they love a good pension.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, my hair's getting long, isn't it? That's what I thought looking at myself there. I was like, the lighting in that studio is far better than this. This one makes me look like a washed-out old hag. But down in that studio, the warmth of the filter, don't I look all right? My hair's got well long. Didn't know that until I just saw myself. I never watch myself back, by the way, because I'm not a weirdo and a narcissist, and I'd probably find myself extremely cringeworthy if I decided to go home, you know, charge up YouTube and watch things coming out of my mouth. I think I would shudder in the same way that when you hear your own voice on an answer machine, you go, oh, my God, I sound really, you know. Yeah, never do that. Never listen back to yourself on an answer machine. It is cringeworthy, which is why I never watch myself back on telly, because I kind of think I'm weird. You probably do as well. OK, we're going to take a short break now, and when it comes to weird, there's always weird that happens when I'm joined by my former television husband, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing after the break, so don't go anywhere. I'll see you soon.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, well, you know what? When the world don't make sense, there used to be a little thing back when we had our little TV show downstairs, talkTV. Remember that? Those are the days. When things didn't make sense, there was once the most dynamic duo in all of broadcasting to try and rattle through the lot of it, shine some light on it and have a laugh along the way. It was called Kev and Alex, and we frankly lament the day it finished because it was the greatest show on earth. Well, might not have been, but we certainly enjoyed it, which is why we keep doing it still. Let's do it, Kev. Let's do it. It's Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. And let's hit up those headlines because, oh, my God, have you seen this? Apparently, Trump and Elon are going to have a phone call and get back together.
God knows what's going on there. Put it this way. The dynamic of this dispute, which broke last night, I was on air. You sent me a text. Have you seen this? I was busy trying to do Call Dr. Renee when we have the GP Renee Hunderkamp on and people are phoning in with their medical problems. And meanwhile, I'm saying, oh, yeah, could I just stop you talking about your hernia there? Actually, Washington has just exploded, you know. So this massive, massive row erupts. And the only interpretation you can have on it, and we always thought that this bosom buddy relationship between Trump and Musk would end in tears, but perhaps not so spectacularly as this. And you have to say, I mean, I'm on Trump's side here. I've always liked Musk, but he's acted in a very deranged way. And when he sent that tweet, oh, by the way, you know, guess who's on Jeffrey Epstein's list? A list of shame. It's Donald Trump. I mean, that was by Elon Musk, a man trying to run 3 major businesses in the United States of America, putting that out about the president of the USA. That was an act of utter deranged madness on Musk's part. Now, this phone call that's going to happen, the rapprochement apparently, I presume my instinct on that, it'll be down to Musk, who's woken up from some kind of haze. Who knows? Who knows what kind of haze? Right. What they say about him, and thought, oh my God, what have I done? And Trump, who actually is not a very vituperative individual, contrary to his image, he doesn't hold grudges. And I suspect Donald's gone, all right, yeah, let him, we'll have a chat. But my God, what a mess. But the thing is, I have some sympathy for Elon Musk's, the basis of his disquiet, the basis of his fury. He said, I spent 6 months trying to save money.
And now you spent it all.
And then suddenly you announced this bill that ridiculously you call the big, beautiful bill. Yeah, it's big, but it's not beautiful. It's a $3.8 trillion spending plan, which Musk believes will make America bankrupt. I suspect Musk is rather cleverer about economics than Donald Trump. So I understand why Musk is angry. But boy, oh boy, has he gone too far with his fury.
I mean, I would quite like to watch. It's a bit like, you know, sort of a marriage in EastEnders where they, like, throw bits of crockery at each other and call each other every name under the sun, and then the next thing they're down the boozer, down the old Vic, patching it up. Which is, I think that's the proper way of going about things. Don't keep things inside. Don't repress your emotions. Let it all out. But then maybe have a modicum of discipline might help here.
One thing you'd say about Donald Trump, you know, and I'm a fan of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
One thing you can say about him is, you know, transparency doesn't even begin to cover the way he governs America. Everything is on television. He tells you everything he's thinking. Everybody knows everything about Donald Trump because it's on telly. So I admire that. You know, the transparency is amazing. But he does tend to, because of that, the dirty linen does get rather washed in public.
Oh, I mean, the two of them both have this habit of letting it all hang out online. And a while ago, it was just last night, the volley of the accusations, just an accelerants, getting more and more extreme. And you thought, blimmin' heck, they're never going to be able to come back from this. And then, 24 hours later, it's kumbaya. So, fingers crossed.
I don't think it's kumbaya.
Do you not?
I think they're putting a sticking plaster over it.
I don't know. I think when people are that creative genius and dynamic, come on, have some optimism.
No. If you were Donald Trump, what would you be saying? Do you want this guy around you anymore?
Yeah, I just went, well, Elon, he's a bit crazy. He's a genius. He does crazy things. Yeah. And I think Elon would be like, yeah, well, Donald, he's also a bit crazy.
Watch this space.
They're too similar to each other. They're just really similar individuals at the end of the day. Right, let's talk now about what's going on in reform, because at some point, when I handed over to you yesterday, that was a big story in town. It was like, whoa, this is big news. And then that got slightly eclipsed by the Trump-Musk saga. But it's worthwhile going back to what's gone on in reform, because, now the dust has settled today, what yesterday looked like a sort of catastrophic fallout and a civil war now just looks like a guy who has worked really hard voluntarily for a party, not making any money, has realised the rough and tumble of politics is pretty grim, had a lot of abuse online. And, there are people out there going, oh, well, Nigel's just making excuses. He had a lot of abuse online. I saw it myself. The fallout from the whole Rupert Lowe thing, which, I think he was instrumental in a lot of those bad decisions that were taken in the handling of that particular issue. But the attacks on him were, to put it mildly, constantly sort of choosing to call him Mohammed instead of Zia, and they got very personal and very, very nasty. And you can't really blame a guy sitting there who, has got money in the bank, is, a young guy working tirelessly on this project for a political party, not being paid a penny, to suddenly go, what am I bothering for?
Yeah, exactly right. I think people are characterising this wrongly. I mean, first of all, this is not, I know this for a fact and you do too, this is not Zia Yusuf falling out with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is very upset about this. He was a big fan of Zia and thinks Zia did great work for the party, which he did. And this also is not just a bust-up about the burqa. He disapproved of what Sarah Pochin asked in the Commons for her debut question, would the Prime Minister consider banning the burqa? Zia Yusuf didn't like that. I don't think it's because he's a Muslim. I think it's because he saw his mission as trying to moderate reform, make them more electable and seem less extreme. And I think he was doing great work in that respect. But also, I think he perhaps swallowed that Kool-Aid a little bit too much. A lot of reform supporters saying, well, hang on, what does he want us to be? Like a kind of mixture of Labour and the Tories in the middle? That's not what we're supposed to be. So I think he went far too far down that path. But you're absolutely right. Along the way, because he antagonised people with his moderate approach, he did get a lot of stick. And I think that tweet he posted yesterday saying, I'm off, this isn't a good use of my time, I think that betrayed a lot of emotional upset on his part. I think he's very, very upset about the attacks he's suffered from all sides in the Reform Party. But the other thing to say, Alex, is very important. Yes, this is worse than the Rupert Lowe affair, but in the end, it will be the same as Rupert Lowe. People go, no, this is particularly the lefties, this is the end of reform, it's all over. No. A week is a long time in politics. In 1 week's time, people will have forgotten this. The reform project is harmed temporarily by this, but has the train come off the track? No, it hasn't. There are 300,000 members, many millions of supporters who still believe in reform. Nigel Farage has got to somehow rally the troops, and he's the man to do that, of course, and get through this, and they will get through this. It's a shame that Zia's gone, but it really, really is not the end of the world. It's one of those explosions that happens in politics, and then the dust settles.
Yeah, Kev, can I say, I think your analysis on all of that is absolutely spot on. I actually wouldn't change a word of it. Now, let's talk about Kemi Badenoch. Talk about, Zia Youssef wanting to have a mollifying aspect on the former people in the party going, but this isn't us, we're red meat, we're not supposed to be trying to be like the uni party. Kemi Badenoch seems to find herself in a similar vice at the moment because she's sort of coming out and going, yeah, I've decided we should leave the ECHR. I think it's not really possible to reform it, so I'm going to set up a commission to look into that, rather than actually coming out with a policy. Why? Because for many people within her party, leaving the European Convention of Human Rights is seen to be a massive red line.
Yeah, well, this is ridiculous. This is Westminster bubble claptrap. And Kemi is trapped in the Westminster bubble, terrified about the division in her own party, about the ECHR. And then you see Keir Starmer say, oh, we've never, in the rule of international law, they wouldn't even think about leaving the ECHR. And around the country, I'm not just talking about sort of Labour voters, Tory voters or Reform voters, just everybody around the country looking at these ridiculous politicians tying themselves up in knots about whether or not we should belong to an old organisation that we actually formed back in the early 1950s. And everybody goes, what is wrong with these people? Look, if we're going to solve this migrant crisis, here's the deal. We leave the ECHR. And if Kemi Badenoch is remotely interested in reviving the Tory party's fortunes, then she has to stop all this prevarication, all this nonsense about, I'm going to set up a review. Why? What do you mean set up a review?
What a waste of time.
Do it, woman. Just do it.
Just
leave.
Have an idea, have a policy. I mean, people have moaned about her not having a policy, and I used to say, well, it's okay, because we're a long way out from the general election. And I hate this thing that we've got in British politics now, where we're constantly in campaigning mode, having to constantly write and update manifestos and then accused of, U-turns when 2 years later you suddenly go, I don't like this policy anymore. Hey, that's being adaptable. I hate the fact that we've become, that the election cycle never seems to finish anymore. But at the same time, she just sort of, mealy-mouthed, sort of pays lip service to a little bit of everything. And you kind of think, what's distinct about this? Where are you going with this?
Both parties, Labour and Tories, are in a total ridiculous, ludicrous mess about this. Now, Keir Starmer's solution is even more pathetic than Kemi's. Keir Starmer's solution is we stay in the ECHR, but the bits of it that we don't like, we'll just ignore. Well, you can't do that. You just can't do that. You either quit or you don't. If you're in it, you have to obey the rules.
But also, that involves essentially the government saying to lawyers how they should, forge their judgments.
Which won't work because lawyers don't take their orders from politicians. They look at the law and they say, I'm sorry, we're instructed by Article 8 of the ECHR. So Labour's solution is ludicrous and very self-destructive for them. They'll lose the next election on the migrant crisis alone. And many other things as well, of course, but the migrant crisis will do for them. And Kemi Badenoch, she just needs to grow a pair and say, we are leaving. Can you tell me, you're a seasoned political campaigner, Alex, can you tell me, please, what exactly do we, the people of Great Britain, get out of belonging to the European Convention on Human Rights?
Nothing. I think it's that little bit of, global glad-handing international kudos. That's all it is. It's just a load of rubbish. Kev, it's been amazing having you join me today. I miss us. Right, we're going to take a short break now. After that, we're going to be talking about the NHS finally being forced to rip up their trans guidance. That's right. It took them a while, but apparently the Supreme Court ruling has suddenly reached their inboxes and they might be finally doing something about it. Thank goodness for that. I'm also going to read out some of your messages, I hope, before the end of the show. Last call, 03444991000 if you want to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note, 87222 on the text. Put talk before your message. I'm back after this.
Musk is saying he is going to, in effect, take offline. You've got Steve Bannon, who, as you know, is a big supporter of President Trump, who's suggesting that Trump take over SpaceX. I'm not quite sure what the authority would be to do that, but take over the company so that that doesn't happen. This is a total mess.
Yeah.
And as I said at the beginning, you know, in terms of a tabloid type story, a sensational type story, I don't think you can beat this one, can you?
No, I don't think you can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh man, it's like a roller coaster. It's like I was so excited that we were going to get reconciliation. Right? I just went, oh, look at this. Both of them are saying we got to kiss and make up, Elon and Donald this is, but it transpires that Donald Trump will not hold a phone call with Elon Musk today, according to White House sources. Oh, I was so optimistic. When it comes to things like this, I'm a glass half full kind of gal. And there you go. I thought there was a little bit of a miracle. I thought that the dove of peace had appeared with an olive branch in Washington, D.C. But alas, I may be wrong. Well, let's just wait and see. Never give up. That's what I say. Always keep the dream alive. Well, talking about never giving up, that was what the NHS seemed to be doing for a long time when it came to their mad bonkers trans rules. Because despite that Supreme Court ruling saying, guess what, women are women, men are men, you kind of are in the business of biology, perhaps you should have known that. The NHS actually didn't apply that judgment for such a long time. Well, they've now been forced to rip up their pro-trans guidance after it's been rendered illegal by the Supreme Court ruling. Let's speak now to Amy Gallagher, former NHS nurse at the Tavistock Clinic and a commentator at the New Culture Forum. Amy, great to have you on the programme. I mean, it was very clear when the Supreme Court made this ruling that men are men, women are women, single-sex spaces are for biological men only and biological women only. And yet so many hospitals just didn't want to apply this judgment.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I should say that the Supreme Court ruling didn't change the law. It just clarified the law. So that was always the law. It was always the law that single-sex spaces mean sex in terms of biology, not gender. But it was just activists that muddied the water and tried to change the definitions. So when we see trusts now coming out saying, we're updating our guidance because it's now out of date, it was always out of date. It was always wrong, and it was always encouraging illegality. So they're trying to pretend like there's been this change that now suddenly we know something we didn't know. They always knew this, and they were always throwing women under the bus and disregarding women's rights in favour of trans rights. That was always the case.
I mean, it seems to me that they've now been told, look, it's going to be illegal, you've got to change this guidance. But neither NHS England nor the NHS Confederation have put forward any new guidance yet. I don't know what they're waiting for. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, said he wants this new guidance in place by summer. How hard can it be? Why don't they just say we're going to have single-sex facilities? You know, when it comes to the treatment of people on wards, look, I'm sorry, if you were born male, you've got to go on the male ward. You know, you have a little curtain around you, you just get on with getting on, don't you, when you're poorly? But when it comes to the facilities used by staff, why don't they just come up with the idea that they have a disabled facility or a unisex facility as well as the single-sex ones?
What you've got to understand is they are terrified, I think, of activism, and they're terrified of pushback because the NHS has been pushing transgenderism for so long. If you go into if you go into an NHS hospital, you will see a transgender flag, the Progress Pride flag. You will see lanyards. You will see people wearing badges saying "I'm an ally." It's pushed this stuff for so long, and many people in the NHS, they don't follow the news. They don't know about the Supreme Court ruling. They don't know about the Cass report. So they just still are existing in this culture where trans women are women. And unfortunately, the NHS is not doing anything to kind of undo people's brainwashing. There's no training. You know, there's Transgender Awareness Day and all of this stuff in the NHS, but they never have a training for women's rights or women's safety or children's safety. So you could be working in the NHS and know nothing about puberty blockers and not know that anything has changed. So that's why they're doing it. They're so scared now of reintroducing this whole idea, because they're going to have to admit that they were wrong. We have told you, we have pushed something on you for years that was wrong. And how did they do that? We've not seen any apologies from politicians, from NHS institutions, from Stonewall, from who has apologised for you know, denying women their sex-based rights for all this time. And they're going to have to face that they were wrong, and they don't know how to do that. And that's why they're holding back and they're so reluctant to undo all this guidance.
Oh, do you know, I think hell's going to have to freeze over first. Amy Gallagher, former NHS nurse at Tavistock and a commentator for the New Culture Forum. Right, let's do some of your messages before Mr. Ian Collins bimbles into the hot seat. If Trump is backing down and not going to all-out war, it means there was some truth to Musk's comments. I don't think Trump is backing down. Well, apparently now that sort of a, you know, make-up phone call might not be taking place. I really wanted it to. Honestly, I don't know, such a shame. But let's see. I still hold out hope. Matt in Hove says, Reform losing people with the business acumen of Lowe, Habib and Yusuf just goes to show that mainstream politics is largely suited to unsuccessful people who have an employee mentality. That is why the country is in such a mess. The MPs are awful. Do you know what? I agree with that, Ian, because when you look at the legacy parties, what they've always done is sort of encourage people to join up from a young age. Then when they're sort of in their 20s, they work for an MP in Parliament. Then they might go and stand at a local council. Then they try their luck in a load of seats they're unlikely to win at general election and prove their mettle by campaigning. And then finally, after they've, you know, essentially tugged their forelock and curtsied enough times, they get offered a winnable seat. And I think what that does is ingrain within the ranks of politics people who are essentially deaf, blind and dumb observants, who won't rock the boat, who will always agree with what the dear leader says. But at the same time, you know, politics, there are always going to be disagreements and arguments and big characters and everyone wanting their way to be the way that's adopted. And when you've got big, powerful alpha business people getting involved, they're not used to having that sort of we've got to be collegiate mentality.
That's the trouble. My biggest problem with all of this is it's all done in public and I hate it. Every bit of it. I remember years ago, Michael Heseltine resigned from Thatcher cabinet. I was a wee bairn at the time, as you were. And you might not have been around.
What was the date of that?
And I can't remember now, but it would have been in the 80s, I guess. And he came out of Downing Street and he gave a quick word to the press, and that was seen as like a terrible breach of normal. He didn't say very much at all, looking back on it. He just said, you know, we can't agree on this helicopter contract or whatever the heck it was, so I'm resigning. And that was it. A terrible thing to do for a statesman. And now, of course, it's all slapped over social media. And I cannot tell you, I loathe this era we're in. It's the in plain sight era, which is meant to look nice and transparent. The President of the United States, that turkey Elon Musk, I mean, between the two of them, arguing it out. Oh, you know, I'm going to leave your astronauts floating in space and you're not going to get a rocket contract. It's like, what are you, 12?
I mean, it was funny. It was good.
It's not Snapchat, guys. Sort yourselves out.
It was entertaining.
Look, it's brilliant fodder for us.
But
There's no doubt about it.
It's not very edifying for a statesman and the world's richest, most powerful man.
It's that, and I don't, you know, it does actually. Some people are now saying, well, actually, this was all set up. They were meant to do this, and then they can become buddies again, and it all becomes stronger.
So I'm going to say something sexist now. People always say that women are bunny boilers, that women are the ones who are a little bit cuckoo in the head and unhinged and really go for reputational damage when you upset them.